I bet those glasses make you see better.
Naomi, or you can call me by my nickname, the N-word. I'm a PhD student and a leftist streamer who does debates, convos, and more with a particular focus on queer rights. So you can find me on Twitch, YouTube, and other places. Just search Nominal Naomi. You'll find me.
Whenever you're ready, you got 7 minutes on the clock.
First and foremost, I need to say in my opening, thank you for coming in to have this debate with me, Naomi. Appreciate it very much. Second, the Serbians who are in our audience who enjoy debating are not Irish, so they are not equipped to have this debate. They have not even fortified themselves with a single beer before they have a debate. It's ridiculous. First and foremost, I want to say that I'd like to point out that Naomi has a regressive definition of woman. Making the claim what a woman is one who identifies as a woman, and this makes Naomi fall into this trap. Essentially, if you can see this chart, what is a woman? A woman's someone who feels like a woman. What is that feeling? Right? The feeling is one that's a woman, etc., etc. It's regressive. It's an infinite loop, a never-ending, never-ceasing loop. And I'm going to demonstrate that this is actually the definition. I think that Naomi is going to claim that it's not, but I'm going to demonstrate that it actually is, and that Naomi's not being completely honest with us on what Naomi's definition of woman actually is. Second, when it comes to gender, the construction itself tells us very little because it's a social construction. It's almost meaningless. Naomi is so broad when Naomi explains gender that it could encompass everything, but Naomi can't really limit it because then it can't really explain anything. It's a typical expression of non-facts which have nothing to do with anything. Nothing to do with anything. Naomi will say something like, gender is the way in which the person wishes to be perceived based on their lived experience and how you want the world to perceive your identity. It's a big statement, but it doesn't actually tell us shit. In fact, gender itself is simply era-specific fashion, and it has nothing to do with the essence of what a woman is. There is no way for Naomi in any way to express what that is, because it's impossible for Naomi themselves to have had that lived experience, regardless of what Naomi says. What a woman is or is not, the way Naomi describes it, would be a violation of the very laws of logical identity. Third, Naomi believes that men and women are interchangeable widgets based on X amount of traits. Naomi will tell you that if X amount of those traits are present, then that means Naomi is a woman. The problems with this are astronomical, so I am hoping we can get into that. Also, I'm just going to say that Naomi is what I call sex denialist, and this is much like flat earth, this type of thing. Naomi's a sex denialist, and this needs to be addressed as it's a massive conspiracy, and it's not backed by science. It's not even backed by sociology. So with that, I will turn the floor over in my opening statement, as those are kind of the things that I'd like to address.
Okay, thank you for that. And 1 second here, Naomi, whenever you're ready, you got 7 minutes on the clock.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that was really interesting because Andrew is simply mischaracterizing what I believe on all of these things. I don't believe that gender is simply a matter of identity. I think that we can certainly analyze gender from different frameworks. Perhaps identity is one of them, but I certainly don't believe that that's all there is to like being a gender or living, you know, a life in a certain gender role. Now, also on the sex denialist comment, I absolutely believe that biological sex is real. I don't know where he's getting that from. My claim is that biological sex simply is multifaceted, as in we can kind of break it down into lots of different categories or characteristics, which is also true. But more broadly into kind of what I actually believe, I think that if we're going to begin to answer a question like, what is gender, or what is a woman, or how could a tranner like myself be a woman, we first have to take a step back and determine, what do words mean? How do we determine what words mean? Words are tools for communication. They exist to serve a human need, to serve a functional utility. And the precise meaning of words is highly contextual. Allow me to illustrate with a couple examples. What is a mother? We would typically think of a mother as somebody who gives birth to and raises children, but this creates some questions. Is a woman who adopts and raises children a mother? What about a woman who gives birth to but then abandons her children? Is she a mother? In the context of a Mother's Day celebration, the adoptive mother would absolutely be included as a mother, while the woman who abandons her kids wouldn't be. Yet, in the context of genetic testing, the woman who abandons her kids is their mother, while the woman who adopts them isn't. So why is it that the meaning of mother is different in these contexts? The answer is utility, whether or not the woman in question serves the utility of a mother in the given context. And utility-based contextual meanings even apply to words as simple as water. Whether water refers to pure H2O, or the dirty liquid found in rivers, or the potable liquid found in water bottles, is dependent on the utility that water serves in a given context. Any ecologist will tell you that you can find water in rivers, but if a friend of yours is thirsty and asks for water, you wouldn't be giving them the water they're asking for if you gave them a bottle of river water. River water is water, but it doesn't serve the utility of water in this context. Nor would pure H2O, the waterest of all waters, because it's also unsafe to drink, as it doesn't contain the minerals and additives that are needed for human digestion of water. So the meaning of words, even water, is highly contextual, and it's based on utility. With that said, river water, potable water, and pure H2O can all be water because they each serve the utility of water in their own contexts. So now to get to the topic at hand. There must be a difference between sex and gender because there is greater utility in distinguishing these terms. It's far more useful to be able to analyze biological aspects of sex separately from sociological aspects of gender, because it allows us to think about how these concepts differ, how they relate, and how they interplay. As such, there is greater utility in recognizing gender, woman, as a social class. It cannot solely be a biological class because there is utility in understanding womanhood from a sociological framework. Similarly, there is greater utility in recognizing trans women as women. Descriptively speaking, if you were to, for example, meet me in a restaurant, it's most useful and easily understandable by all parties involved to tell the waiter, I'm meeting my friend Naomi, she's over there wearing the black blouse. If you were to say he, you would just be confusing everyone. Social and linguistic utility is maximized by recognizing me as a woman in this context. And prescriptively speaking, socially affirming the gender identities of trans people drastically improves their mental health and overall well-being, which again shows there is greater utility in recognizing trans women as women. So, to conclude, words are highly contextual tools for communication, and they're based in the utility they serve. There is greater utility in distinguishing sex from gender. There is greater utility in recognizing trans women as women, across both descriptive and prescriptive contexts. And with that, I cede my time.
All right, thank you so much. So Naomi, you said that I was mischaracterizing your position, but you didn't actually give us a definition of what a woman is. You just said it could encompass all these multifaceted things. What is the definition of a woman in your purview?
Would you like a definition?
I would like you to give me your definition, or what
sure,
you
I can certainly give you a definition of woman, but I want to be clear that I don't believe that there is like one end-all be-all definition for any term, let alone woman. But because I recognize woman more so under a sociological framework, I would say that a woman is an individual who's assigned feminine roles and expectations by their society based on perceived femininity, femaleness, and or stated identity.
So it's just a perception? There's nothing foundational about it?
It's based on a lived social experience.
Well, it sounds like it's an empty label because you're not telling me what it actually is. What is
I told you it's based on a lived social experience
Yeah,
of
that
having
doesn't
these
mean anything.
feminine roles and expectations assigned to you by society.
What is the actual definition according to Naomi? If I
just provided it to you.
If I declared that I was a woman, would I be one?
I don't think so.
Why?
That is not your sincere identity.
But assuming that...
Also, that's not your lived social experience.
Assuming that I took it as my lived identity, do you need to have the social experience of being a woman in order to be one?
Are you asking descriptively or prescriptively?
I'm asking you.
Well, I think that descriptively, if we're recognizing woman as a lived social experience, then that would encompass somebody who lives that social role. But if we're talking about how I think that people should be prescriptively treated, then I would want to treat people based off of
You're not
their
answering
sincere
my
identity.
question. I'm asking
That is
you
completely
if a
an
man
answer to your
claims that
question.
they're a woman. If a man claims that they're a woman, a biological male claims that they're a woman, what makes them not one?
What do you mean?
I don't know how else I can possibly frame that better, but I'll try. If a person says, Naomi, I have all the same characteristics that you do, but I'm not a woman, are they a woman?
If we're talking descriptively, if their lived social experience is that of a woman, descriptively, they would be a woman.
So would you misgender them?
No, because I interact with people based off of my prescriptive beliefs.
Okay, so anybody who says they're a woman, you're going to consider them to be one. Is
If
that
it's
not
a
correct?
sincere identity, then prescriptively, yeah.
Well, how would you know if it's sincere or not? You just have to take them at their word.
I think that you can typically do this based off of a vibe check. For example, when Steven
I don't know
Crowder,
what that
when Steven
means. What does
Crowder
that mean,
dressed up
a
as a
vibe
woman
check?
and said that he was a woman, I didn't believe him.
Wait,
But
wait.
I think that a
vibe
trans
check?
woman who sincerely believes that, you know, they are a woman, they want to be a woman, it's pretty easy to tell based on a vibe
Naomi,
check.
you just told me that based on the vibe, if you feel like they aren't, it's okay to misgender them.
If someone like Steven Crowder is pretending to be a trans woman, I think it's okay to misgender him.
Okay, but what if you don't know? What if they're claiming that they are? You don't know for sure, but the vibe you get is that they're not. Is it okay to misgender them?
I mean, I default to being pretty lenient with people, but I think that based on the vibe check, it's pretty easy to tell when someone is being, you know, very, very dishonest.
Well, how do you know? They could be lying. Like, for instance, if you tell me, Naomi, if you said to me, Andrew, I'm a woman, and I said, you're lying to me. The vibe that I get is that you're not. Why am I wrong? Because
Why are you wrong?
it's a
Because my lived social
you claim it's a
experience is
lived
that of a
social
woman.
experience, but you could be lying, right?
Sure, people can lie about their lived social experience.
So then why ought I say something that I think is not true?
I mean, you can say whatever you want to believe. I'm simply arguing for what I believe and
know
what I
what
believe creates the
is.
most utility in these situations.
But Naomi, I know what is. I know that in the realm of what is, I can do whatever I want. I'm asking you, why ought I do this thing?
Why ought you do
Why
what?
ought I go ahead and do this thing where you claim that I need to go out of my way to call somebody based on the vibe, whatever I want, even if what if the vibe I'm getting is that they're
Wait,
lying?
I never said that you have to do this. I'm
Well, no,
explaining
no,
why
no.
I do this.
Well, regardless, it's still an ought. Don't you think people ought not misgender other people?
Yes, I think that people ought to treat people based off of the gender role that they would like to live in.
What if your vibe is that they're lying? Is it okay to misgender them?
If it's somebody that it seems that they are very much being dishonest, yeah.
Well, I don't know what that means, though. That's all subjective.
You don't know what vibe checks are?
It-
I think
well,
there's
if any
lots of
human
things that we
being-
vibe check about.
Well, wait a second. If any human being then, based on the criteria of like conservative Christian, thinks that a transgendered woman is lying about being a woman, they should then misgender them because their vibe is that they're lying, Naomi.
I don't think that they think the trans woman is lying. I think they disagree with the trans woman, which is not
No,
the
they
same thing as
think-
thinking that the trans woman is lying.
Well, they think they're lying about being women.
Wait, is it a lie if like the conservative person and the trans woman has a different perceptive of like what gender means, and the trans woman sincerely believes that she is a woman? Like, is that a lie or is that just a different perspective?
It's a lie if, from the conservatives' perspective, they believe
That's
or
not a
the-
lie at all. That's a
the
difference of
Christian
perspective.
person believes that what you're doing, well, okay, lies are based often on perspective. They can be malicious, this is true, but they're based often on perspective. The conservative wouldn't be lying then by misgendering you, would they?
Wait, what do you think a lie is? I think that a lie is a false statement.
I'm not going to endlessly define everything under the sun with you. If you want me to pull up a definition of lie, I will, but it's acting in a way which is dishonest, right?
Yes, and a
That would
trans
be the
woman is
person
not
lying.
acting dishonest by claiming that she's a woman. Just
But how
because
do
she
we
has a
detect
different
what's-
definition of woman, that doesn't mean she's acting dishonest.
How do we detect what's a lie?
How do you detect what's a lie? Well, I
Yeah.
think there are lots of things that it's kind of hard to detect what's a lie, and we kind of just take
Well,
people
then what are
on
you
their
even
word or based
talking
on a
about?
vibe
So
check.
then it
I mean,
is a
for example, somebody could somebody could lie to you about what their name is, but we kind of just take people at face value on that.
Yeah, but if somebody came up to you and they had a scar across their face and they said, I have no scar on my face, is it okay to say that you're lying?
Well, if it's based on something that is physically observable, then perhaps they are lying.
If it's based on something that's physically observable that you can see and from your perspective is not true, you're not actually lying then by misgendering somebody,
gender is
are
not
you?
something that's just like purely physical.
Really?
Yes.
There's a metaphysical aspect to it? What would that be?
I would say that gender is more so sociological in nature.
So it's a social construction, that's true, but every manifestation that you can point to of it would be physical, correct?
I guess, like, are things like behaviors physical?
The way that they manifest are physical, yeah.
I would certainly think that, like, gendered expression, there would be physical manifestations of it.
Yes, it's all physical. We've established this. So I don't know what you're talking about. You essentially have just told me that if a person believes that the other person is lying in regards to gender, that it's perfectly okay for you to misgender them. This is your stance you just took, Naomi.
I think that if it's, like, very clear that somebody is being dishonest, you don't have to, you know, follow along with that. But trans people aren't being, you know, dishonest by claiming to be a certain gender.
Okay, well, you claim this, but from my perspective, they are. What's wrong with me saying that you're lying and then misgendering you?
So a lie requires intent. This is something that you've said yourself.
Yeah, but I'm not lying about it.
Wait, but you said that the trans person is lying. The trans person had no intent of being dishonest.
No, the intent
You
works
yourself
on both
have said that
levels.
lies require intent, but there is no intent of dishonesty when a trans woman claims to be a woman.
The conservative also isn't lying to you by misgendering you, is he?
I never said that they were lying.
Right, they're not lying. So the thing is that in order to be completely honest, a conservative must misgender.
If that's what they believe, like
yeah, because that's the vibe.
I'm not saying like they have to like gender a trans person as the trans person would.
Right. So because that would be a lie and that would be bad and that would be against the vibe. So as we can see, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, out in the audience, Naomi made a phenomenal case for why anybody who doesn't believe that a trans woman is a woman, it's okay to misgender them, because Naomi wouldn't want you to lie after all. Right, Naomi?
Well, hold up. I think that there is a loss of utility in doing so. Now, people can, you know, for whatever their intentions are, they can still do things that have bad outcomes. So, for example, misgendering a trans person, it has negative outcomes. That's a bad thing.
Doesn't lying have negative outcomes?
It certainly can.
Yeah. So how do we determine
but not necessarily.
whether the lying has a worse negative outcome than the negative outcome on your utilitarian chart of how the person feels who is doing the lying?
Wait, what is the negative outcome for like a conservative to like gender a trans person correctly? How is that to violate your religion? I just told you. You just expressed that if, from the perspective of the Christian, they believe that they're lying by giving you a gender that they don't believe is true, that actually correlates with the sex in which you're trying to express, they would be lying. That's against their core value. There's no utility in it for them whatsoever. In fact, it's counter-utils. Negative utils. Wait. Just because like a religious person believes something doesn't necessarily mean that like that is a moral action to do.
Just because a transgender person believes something doesn't necessarily mean it's a moral action either.
Right, which is why we should look at objective outcomes, such as the mental health and overall well-being of trans people.
Why should we look at objective outcomes? Wait, stop.
And the affirmation of trans people improves those outcomes.
You smuggled this in. The objective outcome, right? How do we know that this is the objective outcome, that it's more harm for you to tell the entire swath of the American public, some 270 million who self-identify as Christian, that it's better for them to lie from their perspective than it is for you to be lied to because you think the outcomes are more negative?
There is no harm in gendering a trans person correctly, and we have research studies, medical studies, which show that trans people's mental health outcomes are better when they are socially affirmed in their gender, like in the gender they wish to be.
Well, that's nice for them, but what about the person doing the gendering? Where's the study showing what it does to the person's psychology when they're forced into a situation of having to lie to make you feel better?
I don't think that we have necessarily like studies. I don't think we have any evidence which shows that like Christians are harmed by gendering a trans person correctly.
You
So I
haven't.
think we should be. I think we should default to analyzing that as neutral, unless you can present
Well,
evidence that it's
no.
harmful.
No,
we
no,
should
no.
default to analyzing that as neutral.
Why there's no evidence? There's no evidence because nobody will fund what it does psychologically to a population to be forced to lie. And
Are you really claiming to be victimized by like calling a trans woman she? Like that victimizes you?
You said earlier that based on the vibe, that a woman's not just anybody who says they're a woman, because if that were true, then just based on the vibe, you can say, no, that's not true, right? You said that that's totally appropriate, meaning from the person's perspective, the individual's perspective, it's okay for you, if you believe that you're lying, to not lie, right?
So I'm talking about like trying to figure out people who are being disingenuous. A trans person is not being disingenuous. Now,
yes, they are.
You are claiming that like there is a harm in having or in like gendering a trans person correctly.
Yes,
how are
that's
you
correct.
the victim in gendering a trans person correctly?
Because you're forcing me to lie.
I'm not forcing you to lie.
Yeah, and not only that, it's emotional hostage taking because transgenders are saying either lie to us or we'll kill ourselves.
I never said that.
Well, but when we talk about the data that you're about to get into for why it's objectively better to not misgender trans people, the number one thing you're going to bring up is that they may consider self-suicide if we don't gender them correctly. Correct?
So just because like if you are going to is it correct that trans people commit suicide at like greater rates when they are not socially affirmed?
I'll just restate it really simply. Is it not correct that you're about to tell me that the number one reason that we need to use the proper pronouns is because if we don't, transgender people are going to kill themselves? Isn't that true? Isn't that really what you're going to tell me next?
I don't think that's like necessarily like the main or only reason. I think that just like doing things that lead to, you know, better, more accepting, more welcoming, more happy, healthy societies in general is a good thing, such as gendering trans people correctly.
Because if we don't gender trans people correctly, what's the consequence, Naomi?
Worsened mental health and all the things that are associated with that.
Which leads to...
It can lead to mental health disorders. It can lead to suicide. There are lots of things that it can lead to.
Right? Okay,
there are lots of negative outcomes it can lead to.
Right,
don't you want to prevent those negative outcomes?
Well, perhaps. It depends on what we mean when we're saying negative outcomes. When I'm asking specifically here...
Do you want to like prevent trans people from committing suicide?
I want to know why you think that a whole swath of the population that may not believe this should do it anyway, other than the fact that you're holding us emotionally hostage, literally at the barrel of a gun to your own heads to say, if you do not do this, we are going to collectively start killing ourselves.
I never said that. I have never used any language
then why ought we
I have
do
never
it?
used any language that's emotionally hostage taking. I'm simply stating we can create better social outcomes by socially affirming trans people. That is just a fact. I'm just stating facts here.
What social outcomes do you want to see? You want
I want
to
to see
the
improved mental health.
suicidality?
I want to see improved well-being.
Right. Why do you want to see those things? Because if trans suffer from a worse mental health status, what ends up happening? Their suicidality rate goes through the roof, right? This is the number one critique, is it not?
That is certainly one thing that happens, but also socially affirming trans people leads to good social outcomes for everyone. When trans people are more included in society, when they're more able to self-actualize, they can become happy, healthy members of society that are more productive, and that helps us all. I think you should be interested in this too. If you want a happy, healthy, productive society, you know, building a diverse and accepting society is going to help us all, and that would include the social affirmation of trans people.
Well, Naomi, let's dive into that and see if that's true, right? When you say that we should socially affirm trans people's identity because it's good for the trans people, why do I, a Christian conservative, believes I'm lying by calling you something I know for sure, at least from my perspective, is a lie? Why is that good for all of society, considering that you're outnumbered thousands to one?
Because there is no harm in you gendering a trans person as they wish. Meanwhile, we have demonstrable benefits of gendering a trans person as they wish.
Naomi, is lying harmful?
It certainly can be.
Okay, it can be. And if you were a person who was a Christian, one of the foundations of your religion was that you were not allowed to lie. would it be harmful for you then to do something that was contrary to your own religious values?
It can be.
Would it be?
I don't think that I can make a blanket statement there.
You don't think that a person who lived their life contrary to their own values, that wouldn't be harmful?
I think that it certainly can be, but I
Yeah,
think that
it can
people
be.
have justifications for
So
things
if you're
where they might
asking
have
me to-
conflicting values, such as,
So if-
I think that you in general would believe that reducing the amounts of people that kill themselves is a good thing. You also believe
think that
that
you would
lying is a
also-
bad thing. You have some conflicting beliefs there, so I mean, there's
So
some,
you
there's
want
some
me to
things to
lie?
weigh.
So you want me to lie so that trans people won't kill themselves, right?
I don't think it's a lie.
But that's what you want. Why not just admit that that's what you want? It's a lie from my perspective. I'm not saying that you're lying. Listen, Naomi, I want to be ultimately charitable here. I'm not claiming that you yourself are trying to lie to me. I don't believe that that's true. Okay. From my perspective, though, regardless of what you believe, I think you're lying. Therefore, it's contrary to my religious belief structure, which is very harmful to me. So why should I affirm the identity unless it's to somehow stop you from doing self-harm? You're asking me to do something against my moral values in order to stop you from self-harming. How is that justification? How is that good for society?
How is it good for society? Because
Yeah.
it leads to better social outcomes.
How do you know?
Because we have studies on this. We have
We
studies.
don't have any studies on
We have
how it
studies
makes
on
Christian
trans
feels
people.
to lie.
Okay,
What
well, if
studies
we
do you
don't
have?
have any evidence for your claim, I think we have to default to it being utilitarian
No,
neutral.
we don't. First of all, that's not how science works. Science doesn't only
If you don't have
default
evidence that
to
it's
any
actually like harmful to
conflicting-
you, I don't think you can claim that it's harmful to you.
Well, first of all, wait a second. I have no evidence. I'm telling you that you're asking me personally to do something that conflicts with my own moral values. That would be harmful to me, yeah?
I think that you have moral values that are at conflict there because you also have a moral value for social good, don't you?
It depends on what the social good is.
Say like people in general having better mental health and like being more so able to self-actualize.
Not necessarily. It depends.
You don't
on
think that people
specific
should have better
criteria.
health? You don't think
Depends
that
on
we should take
specific
actions that
criteria.
give people better mental health on
No,
average?
like for instance, if you were to say, should a person take a magic pill that makes them live for 300 years? I would tell you no.
I'm talking about mental health.
Okay, but let's say you said that a person could take a pill. Like I said, it's the criteria that matters. You have to be very specific here. I'm giving you something that is now. It is right this second. I'm telling you that Christian conservatives don't want to gender trans people based on the pronouns of their preference because we think we're lying. And so this causes actual harm to us. On the scale, you say, but the only empirical evidence that I can demonstrate is a harm to ourselves. That's nice, right? But there is
I
polling
don't think you can
data,
empirically
by
demonstrate
the
a
way,
harm to yourself.
that I just told you that you're asking me to lie, and that's harmful.
That's
to
not
me.
empirical.
That's harmful
That's
to my
entirely
psychological
subjective.
health. What?
That's entirely
How is this-
that's not empirical. You don't have any
How
numbers.
is it subjective?
You're saying it hurts my feelings.
Wait
Like,
a
that's
second.
just entirely
That's all
subjective.
you're saying.
No,
That's
no,
all
I'm
you're
saying I'm saying we have objective data which shows that trans people live better lives
Oh, you're so
when
full
they
of
are
shit. The
when they are
objective-
socially affirmed.
No, the objective data that you're going to say is that these amount of people were polled and it hurt their feelings. Isn't that true?
No, we also have objective data on things like educational outcomes, things like economic outcomes. Trans people who
Yeah,
are socially
because their
affirmed
feelings are no
do
longer
better in society. They
Because
get
their
better
feelings are no
jobs.
longer hurt.
They acquire higher education. We can actually point to objective outcomes that have been studied
why?
here. But you
But
can't
why?
point to any objective outcomes.
Yes, I can. I've already done this multiple times. I'm saying
No,
to
you just pointed to your subjective
you
feelings.
you have logically stated this multiple times already, that a person who has the religious values that I have, that of saying something that's perceived as a lie from their perspective would probably be harmful to them.
I said it can be.
Yeah, it can be, and I'm
I didn't say
demonstrating to
probably.
you that
I said it can be.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think that Christians, conservative fundamentalist Christians, why do you think that they don't want to label transgender people by their pronouns?
Because it hurts their feelings.
So it hurts them?
I think their poor fifis are in danger. I think it's
So it
I think it's
hurts-
snowflakery, TBH.
So it hurts them.
I think it's just about their feelings.
So, okay, and what is it for trans people if it's not about feelings?
It's about objective outcomes, which we have measured in like the
Based
in,
on
in scientific
how they
literature.
feel. It's all based on how they
No,
feel.
not just based on feelings, based on mental health, based off of
Okay.
socioeconomic attainment.
Naomi, you're so full of shit. If a person does better,
Socioeconomic attainment is different than feelings.
the affirmations that are happening for trans people are so that they feel better, so that they can do all the education and blah blah blah. Isn't that true?
What'd you say?
I said specifically, it's their feelings that lead to those outcomes, right? It's based 100% on how they feel, and that's what's actually leading to those better outcomes.
Based 100% on how they feel?
It's 100% based on how they feel. Otherwise, why would the affirmations matter to them?
How can you say it's 100% based on how they feel?
It can't be based on anything else.
I think that it certainly can be based off of things like social cohesion. That's not necessarily a feeling.
So, of course it's a feeling. What else is it?
No, actually having greater connections is not just a feeling.
That's
like
a feeling.
If you're better able to network, that's not necessarily just a feeling. Like that's something where it's like it's something you've actually achieved.
What's the purpose of it? The purpose of it is how you feel. All of the affirmation is based around how you feel. All affirmations are based around feeling. You say that this does harm to Christians because it hurts their feelings. I'm saying the same argument. The only thing that it does harm to you on is that it hurts your feelings. But there's far more of us whose feelings get hurt. We know this because I can demonstrate to you how many Christians there are, fundamentalists in this nation. A lot more feelings get hurt on this side.
So what are like the negative outcomes of that? What are the objective negative outcomes of that?
You're about to tell me, Naomi, that the negative outcomes, if we don't do what you say, is that trans people are going to kill themselves, just so you know.
That is perhaps...
You're trying to hold us emotionally hostage.
One negative outcome. I'm not holding you hostage. I'm just stating that that's something that happens when trans people are not socially affirmed at higher rates.
For us is that we feel like we're strangers in our own nation and religion. We feel like people are allowed to not only broadly lie to us.
I asked for objective outcomes. Do you have any?
The objective outcomes is that our mental health suffers from having to lie.
What's your source on that?
You're my source on it, Naomi.
I asked for objective outcomes.
You already told me.
And you just pointed to your feelings. You don't have objective outcomes.
Naomi, why again do fundamentalist Christians not want to use proper pronouns?
Because they're snowflakes.
Because it hurts their feelings?
Yeah, because it hurts their feelings.
Source? Give me the source, Naomi. Give me the source.
Well, that's talking about a subjective thing.
No, give me the source, Naomi. Give me the source that it hurts their feelings right now. Do it.
So I asked you for something objective. I didn't want to just talk about.
Objective.
Do you want me to give you sources about how socially affirming trans people gives them objectively better outcomes? Because I can do that, but you can't give me any. I asked for sources on objective data.
I just asked
not
you for
sources on subjective data.
I asked you for a source for a claim.
Andrew, one sec. I never asked you for a source on subjective data. I asked you for a source on objective data.
It is subjective data.
You claimed that it was objective, but you didn't have any data.
It's not objective. Your source is based 100% around polling of how people feel.
That's not true.
And then based on those feelings, you get
that's not true. I also have studies that are based off of economic outcomes, educational attainment,
which all lead back to how they feel.
That's not done based off of a poll of people's feelings.
Back to the feelings.
You can collect this from demographic data. That's not based off of a poll. You said it was based on. You said it was based solely on a poll, but that's just not true.
Yes,
we can actually assess the objective outcomes of trans people, and they improve when they're socially affirmed.
Well, let's find out if this is true or if you're lying to me again. Okay, so here we'll do it this way. How would we know if those objective things like the economic outcomes and the mental health outcomes were true if you hadn't done a poll asking the person if the affirmations were the things that helped them get those results? Can you explain that to me real quick?
So you don't need to ask them what gave you the results. You simply ask them like information about their level of social affirmation. And then independently you assess objective outcomes.
Done. So
you correlate the social affirmation with the objective outcomes, which is something I can do that you can't.
So let me help you out here. Here's what you just said. To everybody listening, here's what Naomi just said. Naomi just said, you can call them and ask them if the affirmations which directly, posited in their life, a type of feeling contributed to this outcome.
That's not what they do.
That's what you just said.
That is not what they do, and that's not what I said.
Then what's an affirmation?
What they ask people is about the level of social affirmation that they experience in their gender identity.
So
things
what's an
like
affirmation?
Things like, are their parents supportive? Things like, do they have friends and family that are supportive of their gender identity?
Feelings.
They ask them things like that, and then
All feelings.
independently they use demographic data about things like economic attainment, educational attainment, and you correlate their level of social attainment with their objective outcomes. This is something that I can do that you can't. You don't have any studies.
But I don't need to.
What
it has no bearing on my
Christians'
argument.
level of misgendering trans people and how that ends up in educational attainment, economic attainment. You don't have any studies on that.
Yeah, I do. Well, I don't. Well, here's the thing. One, I do, and we'll pull up studies in just a second when I move on to my next argument, as this one you're getting just destroyed on. But I'm going to finish this up because you need to explain this. It makes no sense to me. You claim that we can do an objective analysis after they already feel good to show that the outcomes were good. Okay, nobody's disputing that. When I ask you, how do you know, or why is it that you think that Christians don't want to use the pronouns? You say because it hurts their feelings. But when I ask you for a study on that, you say there isn't one. Of course there's not one. Nobody's bothered to do any of the research on it. But you yourself are my source because you believe that that's the truth, and so do I. And that what we're really talking about here is hurt feelings across the board. Your feelings get hurt, which leads to worse outcomes for you in life. But you want to assume to the rest of the audience that hurting the feelings of hundreds of millions of people, no bearing whatsoever. Who cares?
You how hurt, how victimized are you by gendering a trans person as they wish?
You're forcing religious people to lie, Naomi. At
It
gunpoint of self-harm.
It is not a lie at all.
Yeah, you're doing it at the gunpoint of self-harm too, because trans people are saying collectively.
It is not a lie at all.
Yeah, well, if we don't affirm what they're saying, is suicidality going to raise?
If we don't affirm the gender identities of trans people,
identity, yeah,
that does have the outcome of increasing their rates of suicide. That is true.
So it's emotional hostage taking. You're saying have to do it.
I have never held you emotionally hostage.
Do you think
I have never said you I have never said you need to do this because otherwise we're going to kill ourselves. What I said is you should.
Well, you should
do things that lead to better social outcomes, such as improving the mental health of trans people. That's my claim. You should do things that lead to better social outcomes.
Lead to better social outcomes for Christians, which is allowing us to say the gender that we believe is not a lie.
What is the better social outcome?
Well, the social outcome there is that we're not lying, and so therefore our mental health is greatly increased.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lie to gender a trans person the way they wish.
I think it's... Well, then why do Christians want to misgender?
I think they don't understand that...
No, you said it's because they had hurt feelings. Don't change the argument now. I thought it was hurt feelings 5 seconds ago, Naomi. Now it's something different?
I think that it can be both. I think that, ignorance can breed those feelings.
Okay, so if I'm ignorant on this, are you saying that I don't know the difference between gender and sex?
I think that for a lot of people that misgender trans people, they don't.
So if they were to misgender you, they're not lying, are they? If they don't know the difference?
If they, I guess I would certainly agree that lies require intent, but I don't think, I can come up with a blanket statement of, lying is harmful or, lying is good. I think that lying is kind of morally ambiguous, and it depends on the situation. But what matters the most here is objective. What matters the most here is objective social outcomes.
Why does that matter the most? We don't know what the objective social outcome could possibly be on subjecting hundreds of millions of people to having to lie. We've never studied it. We can't study it, but you yourself know that there's a negative outcome because you've stated it now emphatically. I don't know how many times. That the reason that Christians don't want to gender you correctly is based solely on the fact that it hurts their feelings. That's a negative outcome for hundreds of millions on the util scale, Naomi.
So I don't think that I don't think that it's a lie to gender a trans person correctly, though.
Okay, but from their perspective, they're lying.
I think that
that's what matters.
I think that we can educate them on why that's not a lie. and
Well,
create
I
the
think
best.
they can educate you.
We can create the
too.
best social outcome if we can convince them that it's not a lie.
Yeah, but why can't they educate you on why it is a lie?
So we know that that leads to worse social outcomes.
Right, that's right. And the maximum
Objective
of that
social
negatives, yeah, right. The social outcome being, and this all, by the way, is emotional hostage taking, not just the suicidality, all of it. If you're saying it's going to lead to worse social outcomes, the whole thing is hostage taking. If it doesn't provide you with a better education, doesn't help you do this, doesn't help you achieve this goal, doesn't help you achieve that goal, it's all emotional hostage taking across the board.
So
you're
like,
literally saying
so like
we
how
need
many,
to
wait,
make sure that we lie to you so that you have better outcomes. That's emotional
so
hostage
it's not a lie, and I've never said you need to do this. I'm saying it's a good thing to do this. Now, I guess like how many? Okay,
Well, wait,
so
wait,
let's
back
kind of
up.
let's kind of
Ought
compare
we
like
do it?
let's kind of
Wait,
compare like
ought we
what
do
the
it?
what the actual social outcomes are.
Okay, great.
How many
But
Christians?
first,
How many Christians
ought
kill
we do
themselves
this?
because they like gender a trans person correctly?
Who knows? It's never been studied. Ought we do this? Ought we use proper pronouns? Do you think that's an ought? Ought we do that?
Yeah, I think that's a not.
Well, then you are saying it. So don't lie and say you're not.
I'm not
saying
saying need. You're saying you're conflating ought with need.
So what should happen if all fundamentalist Christians collectively tomorrow across the board decided that they were not going to adhere to gender pronouns, right? Should there be consequences for that, Naomi?
Should there be consequences?
Yeah.
I think that perhaps like trying to educate them better. Yeah, I think that's what I would try to do
not what
to
I asked. I
approach
asked if
that
there
situation.
should there be consequences? Should they get fired, for instance, from their job? Even though they have a conflict.
I think that misgendering people can certainly constitute like workplace harassment.
Right. So there has to be consequences. So this is an ought claim. You want actual consequences to happen to people if they don't follow along with the we must gender you a certain way. So if that's true, then this is an ought claim, and you are saying we need to do it or else.
I mean, like I think that in the workplace harassment case, like you can create a hostile work environment by like vehemently misgendering people, and that just makes the office worse for everyone.
Yeah, but should there be a law that says that a person must do this?
A law that a person like must do this? I don't think so.
That a person must gender correctly inside the workplace.
No, I think this is probably better handled by like HR boards, because like dealing with hostile work environments
so it's not
pretty
discrimination?
complicated.
Is it discrimination to do? What if I don't want to hire you?
Is it discrimination to do what?
Yeah, what if I don't want to hire you and I say I don't want to hire you based on the fact that you have these pronoun restrictions?
You don't want to hire someone because they're trans?
Because they have pronoun restrictions and they conflict with
everybody
my
has
faith.
pronouns.
And they conflict with my faith.
So you want to like be able to not hire someone who has a certain gender identity because of like your religion?
No, I want to make sure that I don't have the requirement isn't that I have to lie to them from my perspective.
I think you might get into the territory of violating the Civil Rights Act if you were to do that.
And what's the civil right?
Like the civil right for people to be free from discrimination.
Well, what's discriminatory about it if there's no lie? At least from the person's perspective.
Discrimination doesn't have to be like a lie.
Well, I think that discrimination preferences are mostly based around the fact that they're preconceived notions which are often wrong and lies.
No. Discrimination is denying somebody access to an institution based off of like a protected attribute, such as gender identity, for example.
And why?
That's
and
discrimination. That has nothing to do with lying.
But those people.
Wait. Discrimination has nothing to do with a lie.
Oh no, it does. What do people mostly discriminate along the lines of?
Race, gender,
stereotypes, right?
That's perhaps one thing that people discriminate along the lines of.
Probably the primary thing, right? They discriminate based along stereotypical lines. Wouldn't you agree?
That is one way in which like discrimination happens.
So I mean, the stereotypical lines are mostly lies, and that's why they're bad. They're bad because they're not true, and that's why you shouldn't discriminate. But what happens if you have a conflict with somebody who's discriminating based on their
I don't think that
truth?
discrimination is bad just because something's like untrue. I think that discrimination is bad because it denies people equal opportunity.
Yeah, but what's the motivation to discriminate to begin with?
Typically feelings.
Typically feelings. Usually preconceived notions that are untrue, correct?
Snowflakery.
Like, for instance, if somebody said, I don't want to hire Mexicans because I think that they're lazy, that would be a stereotype that's not true, correct?
That would be a stereotype that's not true. That is correct.
Right. And that's most of the reason that we have discriminatory practices, right?
Because of what?
because of stereotypes. Stereotypes are what leads most often to discriminatory practices.
In I guess typically yes, but I don't think that like just because something is true or untrue is like what's harmful inherently about discrimination. I think that what's inherently harmful about discrimination is the denying of equal opportunity.
I'm not asking you what's harmful, I'm asking you the motivation.
But wait, I care about the harms. I'm a consequentialist.
Yeah, but I care about the motive. That's nice. I care about the harms too, but the motivation is what leads to the harms. So you're kind of putting the cart before the horse.
I don't think that like lies are necessarily what leads to the harms.
Really? So you don't think that it's basically the reason that most people would discriminate is based along preconceived notions that likely aren't true? Isn't that the primary reason for discrimination?
That's typically how discrimination happens.
It lies. That's what I'm saying. So if you're in a situation where you know something is true, know it's true, and you're forced to lie, right? You're saying you shouldn't be able to discriminate. So this is your
let me give an example. Something can be a stereotype that can be true, and it can still be harmful to discriminate along those lines. For example,
give me an example.
It is true that black people commit crime more on average than white people. There are systemic reasons why this happens. But if you were to discriminate against like black people because you just think like they're more likely to be criminals, that's based off of something that is true, but it's still harmful to discriminate there. The harm isn't in whether or not something's true or false. The harm is in denying people equal opportunity.
Yeah, the problem is that there's a lot of nuance within the confines of that statement, especially when it comes to higher criminality by other perceived races. For instance, you don't believe in race, right, Neil?
I think that race is real.
You think that race is real?
At least as real as any other political construct.
That's not what I asked you. Is biological race real?
Is like skin color real?
No, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if biological race is real.
What do you mean by biological race?
I mean, can you taxonomically categorize people biologically along racial lines?
To some extent.
Well, what does that mean? Like I said, the gift is in the nuance, Naomi.
So I think that like the political category of race that we've constructed is not like strictly based off of like biological features. I think it has much more to do with lineage, which is not like cleanly delineated biologically.
What do you mean? What does that even mean? That doesn't mean anything.
Like,
what are you talking
what
about?
Is race as a political category?
I'm asking about the biological taxonomical categorization of race. Is it true or false? Can you categorize people along racial lines or not?
There are certainly lots of different categorizations of race, and not all of them are strictly biological.
That's again.
That's why I say to an extent.
You go out of your way.
These things are more nuanced than just like blanket answering yes.
Well, you don't need a blanket answer.
You're asking for a blanket answer. When I try to provide a nuanced answer, you reject it. You want me to give you a blanket answer, which I'm not going to do.
This has to be rejected because this is a yes or no. Can you taxonomically identify races biologically? Are there?
My answer is to an extent, because it's more nuanced than a blanket yes or no.
Okay, so it's nuanced. Can a person change their race?
I don't believe so.
Why not?
Because race is a political category defined by lineage, and you can't change your lineage.
Then why did you just say it's more nuanced than that, Naomi?
What do you mean?
How else can I say it? Why did you just go out of your way to say it's more nuanced, that you can't say that race is a biological imperative, whether it's a more nuanced appeal, right? Okay, fair enough. It's a more nuanced appeal. But then when I ask you to elaborate on this, you can't. I'm like, look, can you change your race or can't you? And
I did elaborate, and I said you can't change your race.
I can't because it's a political thing. But you said that there's a biological aspect to it. Can you change the biological aspect of it?
What specifically biological traits are you referring to when you're referring to like biological race?
I'm asking you. That's why I asked you. What's the taxonomical
there are lots of ways
that
people. Well, there are lots of ways that people define race. If you're talking about race as in like certain genes that like people have based off of say like ethnic lines, which only like to an extent kind of classifies race. I mean, obviously, like you can't change those genes, for example. But if you're talking about the amount of melanin in someone's skin, Well, I think we have some procedures that can inject people with melanin and stuff.
Perfect. This leads me right to my next portion of my argument, which is that if you cannot change your race due to the biological factors, you also cannot change your sex due to the biological factors.
Are we talking about sex or are we talking about gender?
Sex.
I thought this was a conversation about gender.
They're both intertwined, wouldn't you agree?
I would say they're correlated. Sure, they're certainly related, but they're not the exact same thing.
I didn't say that they were, did I? But one more time, I'm going to go down this road because it's very important. If you cannot change your race, how can you change your sex? Knowing that the genetics determine both of those things.
Sex is not determined by genetics.
Wait, what? Sex isn't determined by genetics?
No.
What do you think a chromosome is, Naomi?
I think that a chromosome is something that has genes, but it's not the sole determiner of biological
something
sex.
that has genes, or it's dependent completely upon genes?
Chromosomes have genes.
What is a chromosome?
Like it's the piece of your genome that has genes.
Wait, what? It's the piece of your genome that's what you think what is a chromosome? Why can't you answer that?
I did answer what a chromosome is. Take a second,
pull up what a chromosome is. Because you just said it's not genetic.
Wait,
which is insane.
Hold up. I said that sex is not solely genetic. Chromosomes are genetic, but sex is not solely based on chromosomes.
Well, what's sex determined on?
Would you like to know what sex is determined on? So sex is multifaceted. We can break it down into lots of categories. There is a genetic component to sex, but there's also an anatomical component. There's a hormonal component. You can even talk about there's a brain component.
Those are all genetic expressions.
Those are not all genes. Hormones are not the same thing as genes. And anatomy is not the same thing as genes.
Let me take a second to go ahead and show you why you're wrong on this. Can you see this okay, Naomi? I can go ahead and scroll in for you. This is the typical XX, you know XX generally, right, for male. You can see...
XX is generally female.
Yes, but this is for an XX male.
Okay.
Okay. As you see the 46XX, you see that it kind of goes around here and goes to smaller testes, and then it goes right in line with what we would generally see with a person who did not have these XX chromosomes. Now, I'm going to show you the typical progression of an XY male. If you look at the XY male here, right? I'll scroll in again. You can see that that loop doesn't exist to bypass the bipotential gonad, but it leads to testes and goes along the exact same arc. Why does it go along that exact same arc? Because genetics determine what your sex is going to be. You only have two paths ever. There's not ever more than two paths, regardless of XY or XX or whatever chromosomes that you want to throw in. It always relies on two, period. There's only two paths ever available, and we can actually chart this out, Naomi.
So what are you saying that's goes against anything I'm saying?
I'm saying that the genes themselves are exactly what constitutes whether or not you're going to be male or female, because genetics are what constitutes the two only paths that are available for a person to go down. And there's only two.
So do you think that gene expression also has an impact on your biological sex?
Gene expression in what way?
Like the actual expression of genes, like how your DNA is read and processed.
I just gave you a demonstration of gene expression.
Yeah, so you would agree that
difference in XY and XX in a male.
So you would agree that gene expression impacts one's biological sex, right?
No, well, no. The pathways are only binary, and they're only ever going to be binary.
But you think that gene expression is what causes these biological sex differences, right?
Gene expression can cause there to be variance within the actual sex construction itself, which are mutations, but no, there's only two paths available, period.
But those paths are caused by gene expression, right?
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that they're caused by gene expression, but the chromosomes in which are expressed only have two paths.
Gene expression is something you can change. So when a trans person
No,
takes
it's not.
HRT, it alters
No.
the gene expression of their cells.
Like,
No,
can
no,
you?
wait, so
no.
let me explain gene expression 101. So DNA is basically computer code. It reads in like inputs and it produces outputs. These inputs are things like hormones.
That's
so
a mass
when
oversimplification.
well, I'm trying to explain it to people. When your endocrine system is testosterone dominant, your cells read in the testosterone input, they produce these male outputs. When your endocrine system is estrogen dominant, it reads in the estrogen inputs and it produces female outputs. This is gene expression 101. If a trans person takes HRT, they alter the gene expression of their cells, and those cells begin to go down the female development pathway. I'm not saying it changes their chromosomes, it changes their gene expression. This has impacts on lots of their biological sex characteristics. I've never claimed that you can change everything about your biological sex.
You can't change your sex,
but there is lots of things you can change. Lots of biological sex characteristics you can change.
Let me ask you.
That's my claim about sex this entire time.
Well, let's see if that's true. Let's see if that's true or not. Let's assume for a second that somebody goes down the exact same pathway that you did. I'm just going to ask one slight personal question. You don't have to answer it, of course, but just for the demonstration purposes, have you taken HRT?
Yes.
Okay, good. So assuming that somebody has the exact same story that you do, however, does not color their hair purple and does not grow it out, right? Or let's just say that they do, in fact, do this, okay? But they say that they're not a woman. Would you classify them as one?
As a woman? Are we talking about woman or are we talking about female?
Would you classify them as a woman?
So woman is a social category. I think we would have to examine their lived social experience to classify them as a woman.
So one more time, I'm going to ask this, right? Because it's very important. If a person who had the exact same experiences that you have had and looks exactly like you do right this second, claims that they're not a woman but is a man, would you say that they're a man or a woman?
I think that their lived social experience would be that of a woman, yet their gender identity could perhaps be that of a man.
What would you call them?
If I believe that they are sincere in their gender identity, I would refer to them based on their gender identity, because that's how I think we ought to treat people.
So it doesn't matter if they look exactly like you, have the same experiences that you do. Everything can be all equal across the board, and you still wouldn't consider them a woman if they didn't want to be considered a woman, which is why your definition of woman is regressive, because it's just anybody who identifies as one. There is no delineation point. There is no delineation point.
Hold up. That's not everything there is to being a woman. I think that from a sociological framework, you could label that person as a woman if they move through society being treated as a woman. Now, based on their identity, I'm saying we ought to treat people based on their identity. That's not a claim about, like, what is a man or what is a woman in and of itself.
Okay, well, let's ask you this then. Are you biologically a woman?
I don't think that biological woman is that sensical of a term. Are you asking if I'm biologically female?
Yes.
In certain characteristics, yes. In other characteristics, no.
So do you consider yourself a biological female?
I would call myself a transsexual female.
Would you consider yourself a biological female?
What do you mean by biological female?
One who can give birth.
Well, I can't give birth, so if that's your criteria, then neither would an infertile woman, but
I'm
okay.
obviously being tongue-in-cheek, okay? I'm asking you a specific question because it does matter. Because
Sure.
if the answer is that you do consider yourself to be a biological female, and somebody else has the same exact experience, looks exactly like you do, and has taken the same hormones you have, but does not consider themselves a biological female, are they or aren't they?
Biological sex is not based on identity. It's based off of
Not
physical
asking you about
characteristics.
identity.
You said that they don't consider themselves to be.
Yeah.
So I'm saying
that's why I want the
their
answer.
identity does not affect their biological
Didn't
sex.
say it did. Never
Okay.
said it did.
So then I
I'm
guess we
asking
agree.
you if
I'm
that
saying
person
that
says-
if somebody's biological sex is identical to mine, they would also be a transsexual female.
Okay, regardless of what they said?
Yes, whatever like whatever you say doesn't change your physical characteristics.
So if I told them that that was the truth, Naomi said that I have to label you a transsexual female because you have the exact same characteristics and the exact same lived experience, right? To do anything other than to call you that would be a lie. You would agree with me, right?
I think that biology is more objective than gender. I don't think
You're
people.
not even-
I think
you're not even
I think you're
engaging.
mixing up gender and
Have you
sex
just
here when you're
checked
talking
out?
about how
I'm
people
sorry,
like
have you-
identify.
Have you just checked out of this? Let me try this one more time. You claim that as far as biology goes, within the confines of Naomi land,
Mhm.
that anybody who had the same exact characteristics, had the same exact HRT, the same exact basic framework that you have around what you consider to be a biological woman, you said that this makes you a transsexual female. And I'm asking you, knowing this, if I met somebody else who had the exact same characteristics across the board, and then they told me to call them something besides that, I would be lying to them, right?
I don't think you would be lying to them by calling them a transsexual female. They
No,
are a
by not
transsexual
doing
female based off of their biology.
Wait a second. They don't want me to call them that.
So
But I do call them that
biological
because they're
sex
Naomi.
is not determined by what you want to be called.
What? Okay.
Biological
again, you're
sex
not-
is determined by your physical
You're
characteristics.
pivoting. You're pivoting. I'm going to restate it again because you've got to answer this. It's super important. Okay. Let's say that I have a cloning machine and I clone Naomi tomorrow.
Yes.
I just clone you, literally clone you. And you come out exactly the same as you are right now, except something inside your brain goes, nah, you know what? I don't want to be a transsexual female. I don't consider myself a transsexual female. And I say, well, right now, objectively, biologically, according to Naomi, you are a transsexual female. So that's what I'm going to call you. I'm not lying to them, correct?
By calling them a transsexual female, you are not lying to them.
So, and that if that's against their preference, then I'm still telling them the truth, even if the preference is that I don't do that, correct?
Correct, because biological sex is not based off of preference, it's based off of physical
Right, so-
characteristics.
So the thing is that if this is so, if this is true, then what's the problem with me misgendering literally everybody that I run into, knowing that the biological consequence of the constant is almost always going to be true?
So gender and sex are different things. You're conflating gender and sex here,
Yeah, I didn't
and that's
know
the
that,
issue.
Naomi. I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were different things, even though we've been talking about the differences between both of them nonstop over and over. Would you like me? Do I need to sit here and define? I'll define the difference. Will that make the conversation better for you? But they
I'm
are
aware of the difference
intertwined.
between biological sex and gender.
Good, me too.
You're the
So
one
we
who's
don't need-
conflating them here.
How?
So you were talking about like referring to somebody like based off of their identity. Like that's more so along the lines of gender
No.
or gender identity.
Okay,
That
but
has nothing
why
to do
am
with
I
their
doing that?
that has nothing to do
No,
with their
it's a
biological
demonstration.
sex.
Why aren't you listening to me? It's a demonstration to say, am I lying or not lying?
I'm listening to you.
Okay, so it's a demonstration of me asking a question about whether or not I'm being truthful or whether or not I'm being dishonest. From your perspective, misgendering them is truthful, so why ought I not do that?
I don't think that it is a lie to like gender a trans person correctly.
It is under your criteria for this demonstration, yes. You said...
Wait. If you think, wait. We're talking about sex, not gender.
Yes.
That's why it's not misgendering someone.
No. Hang on. You just said if I cloned you, and the person came out and I said that they're a transsexual female by the very definition that you gave me, 100%, the definition that you gave me, and I said that to them, I would not be lying. I would not be lying. By your criteria, I'm 100% telling the truth, so why should I lie to them? If they decided that they didn't want to be called that, why should I lie to them?
Well, I think you're conflating gender and sex here, and that's
Why do
the
you keep
problem.
fucking saying
allow
that?
me.
There's no conflation.
Okay, so wait. A transsexual female is somebody who has the biological sex characteristics that I do. A transgender woman is a social class. It refers to somebody who socially transitions.
Thank
So
you. Thank
that's
you.
kind of
Thank
the,
you.
That's kind of the difference
Thank you.
here.
I mean, thank you so much.
Biological
for making sure
sex.
that there's a delineation point that we all
Biological
understand.
sex is objective, so like you can like measure it based off of physical characteristics.
Yeah, thank you. That literally has nothing to do with anything
So
that I'm saying.
just because somebody like doesn't want to be called a certain biological sex doesn't mean that they're not that biological sex.
I am lying to them, correct?
You are lying to them if you do what?
Oh my God. You've done everything but answer this question. You just pivot away. It's hilarious. One more time.
Just
I
make the question
understand
make
the
sense.
If you want me to state specifically the differences between gender or sex before I pose the same hypothetical a third time, I'll do that. But this is pivotal to know whether or not I'm lying to them. So one more time, an exact clone of you comes out and says, I don't want to be identified as a transsexual female. I want to be identified as something else. And I say, well, that's nice. You want to be identified that way, but here's what you actually are. So I'm not going to do it. Why should I lie to them?
I don't think you should lie to them. I think that you should tell the truth about their objective characteristics, such as their biological sex.
But calling them by something that they're not would be called what?
Calling them by something that they're not?
Yes.
Are we talking
lie.
about an objective criteria such as sex?
Yeah, this is an objective criteria, absolutely.
Okay, then you would be lying to them by calling them something other than a transsexual female.
Right.
I've said that 3 times now.
I call them a transsexual female, but they want me to lie to them and call them something else. Should I do that?
No, this is biological sex.
Well, then misgendering people is fine.
No. Wait.
Why?
We're talking about biological sex, not gender. I explain why I'm explaining why you should be objective in classifying people's sex. And now you're saying, "Oh, this applies equally to gender," but they're different things.
No, I'm not.
Then why did you use the term misgender? Why did you use the term misgender?
I'm keeping them completely distinct.
Wait, it's not misgendering them. Hold up, it's not misgendering them to tell them that they're a transsexual female. That is sexing them correctly.
What if they want to be called something else besides that?
I don't think that sex is a matter of identity.
What does that have to do with my question? Nothing.
You're asking for like what sex they want to be called.
Yeah. And I'm saying I don't want to do that because I'm lying to you. You just said it was a lie yourself. So why should I lie to them? And the only answer you have,
I don't think you should lie to them.
The reason that you're going out of your way.
I think you should tell them that they're a transsexual female because sex is objective.
Okay, so if I'm supposed to tell them this and they want to be called something else, should I call them that thing?
You should tell them that they're a transsexual female because that's what their biological sex is.
So I should misgender them.
That's not misgendering. That's sexing them.
What if we had a pronoun that correlated 100% to transsexual female and I called them something besides that pronoun?
Pronouns aren't based in biology. Pronouns are based in like sociology.
They can't. No, well, sometimes, but they can be based on biology. Like cis is based on biology.
Cis is not a pronoun.
Cis is a pronoun.
Like cis is in cisgender?
Yeah.
That's not a pronoun.
Oh, really? Well, okay. You're right.
Do you know what a pronoun is?
Hang on. That's the one thing you got me on the entire debate. You're correct. It's a classification rather than a pronoun, which would be like he, him, she,
adjective.
Got it.
I know conservatives struggle with parts of speech. We'll get there.
Take the one W. You need it so bad. But backing up, I have to ask you this one more time. When it comes to cis, which, by the way, cis does infer. So I'm going to take that back because cis does infer he, him, or she, them, or she, her. She, her, or he, him. That would be consistent
Not necessarily.
With cis. So, yeah, no, necessarily. What would you call somebody besides he who was a male who was cis? So I'm not even going to give you that.
Like a cisgender man? I think that people use they, them pronouns for people of either gender quite often, actually.
Okay. No. Wait, what? They use what now?
They, them pronouns?
Not for being a cis male. Why would they use they, them? That would be like non-binary.
In context where you like don't know their gender, you would probably just default to they, them.
Context, like the made-up context that you just make up on the fly. But that aside, I need...
Wait. For example, somebody left their backpack in this classroom. It could be a man's backpack, yet you still called them they, them.
Is that the default?
I think it is the default when you don't know someone's gender.
It's absurd, but besides that, I still want
would you say somebody left his backpack, somebody left her backpack, or somebody left their backpack?
That was a him.
But you don't know whose it is. That's why you default to they.
If I don't know, that's true. Sure.
So they is the default.
Somebody left their backpack here, but
yeah, you just defaulted to they.
You know what biological sex is, you would say it's his or hers. Once the idea of cis comes into play, you would not mislabel them. You would say he, him, her, she, that kind of thing, because that's the pronouns of cis under your ideological framework. So you can't even take that.
Cis men typically use he, him pronouns. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so what's most important here is, one more time, because I can't let you run from this. You have done everything, obfuscated, ran away from it, done everything but answer. I have to ask you one more time. A clone of Naomi, we know a clone of Naomi has the same characteristics, everything as Naomi. You just keep saying that I'm conflating these things, but I'm not. I'm saying that if I labeled this person as a transsexual female and they requested specifically that I not label them this way, right? If there was a pronoun...
Do you want me to answer this exact same question a fourth time?
If there was a pronoun that directly correlated with what that was, why should I not use that pronoun? Why should I lie?
Pronouns are not based off of biological sex. They're based off of gender.
Yeah, I get it. I'm asking a gender question. This is true that the foundation of it's going to be sex, but the foundation of all gender is sex.
I disagree with the premise that there's a pronoun that's based in the sex of being a transsexual female.
I know. That's why we're assuming it in the hypothetical. Because there could be. And there's no
I don't think this is a useful hypothetical because that premise is
invalid.
invalid.
I don't care if you think it's useful. Just answer it.
Why should I answer a non-useful and disanalogous hypothetical?
Because you can't fucking answer it, because you know that would lead to misgendering spine.
Well, here's the thing. Pronouns don't refer to biological sex. They refer to gender. That's why this hypothetical is not useful to discuss.
I've heard your NPC script, Naomi. I've heard your NPC script 30 times. Do you believe that pronouns are determined by biological sex? No. But I think that you
can why are you using this hypothetical?
Because I think you can have pronouns that relate to biological sex if you chose to have them.
By the nature of gender and sex being correlated, pronouns would be correlated with sex.
No,
sure,
you can have them,
but they're not determined by sex.
Why would there be a violation having a one-on-one determination? If you said cis, right, that refers to what?
Are you talking about
biological sex? Say
are you talking about
sex.
cisgender or cissexual?
Well, hang on. What does cisgender mean? You can't be cisgender if you have the opposite sex. It doesn't work.
Cisgender is somebody whose gender identity aligns with the gender that was assigned to them at birth.
No, it aligns with the sex that was assigned to them at birth, not their gender at birth. That's absurd.
That's cissexual. Cissexual is somebody whose biological sex is the same as the sex that was assigned to them at birth.
Wait a second. What does cis mean?
Cis means like the pronoun, or like the prefix cis.
Uh-huh.
It means on the same side.
As what? So you're on the same side as what?
As what was at birth. So a cissexual is on the same. A cissexual is somebody who's on the same side of sex as what they were at birth. A cisgender person is on the same side of gender as what was assigned to them at birth.
It's literally assigned to your sex. That's what cis is.
That's what cissexual
you're identifying your gender as the same sex that you were born as.
So okay, wait. Like when a baby is born, we determine like a sex based off an observation of their genitals. That's the determination of their sex. We also assign them a gender. We also assign them a gender when society starts treating them in a certain role. Yeah, when I say assigned gender, I'm referring to social elements, how parents treat boys and girls differently as they're being raised. That's what I mean by the gender assigned to them at birth. When I say the sex that's determined or assigned at birth, I'm referring to their biological characteristics.
Cis would have no meaning if it didn't correlate to what you were assigned as sex at birth. It wouldn't have any meaning.
That's the meaning of cissexual. I recognize that cissexual is real.
Again, so then there are pronouns that do correlate specifically to the sex that you're born with. So it's not absurd to put it in the hypothetical. You're lying again. So answer my fucking hypothetical finally. If I clone Naomi and the Naomi clone came out and said that I have this other pronoun that I want you to call me that directly correlates with transsexual female, or that doesn't correlate with transsexual female, it correlates with some other, like let's just say female, I shouldn't call them that, right?
I don't think that pronouns are based in your biological sex. If you have one I think that you ought to call people by the pronouns they prefer.
I just can't believe it.
Because pronouns aren't determined by your biological sex. Pronouns are determined by gender.
How many times do I have to say the words "I know that"?
Like, do you just want me to answer this? Like, you keep on changing the hypothetical and asking me the same. I don't think this hypothetical is all that interesting.
Well, then just answer it.
I already did.
Now, your answer was, "I'm not going to answer it."
No, I said that I think you should call them by the pronoun they wish because pronouns aren't determined by biological sex.
So that would mean I'm lying, though, right?
How would it be a lie? Pronouns aren't
If we
determined by
had
biological sex.
if we had a pronoun that was specifically correlated to whatever this sex was, in this case, transsexual female.
Just because something's correlated with something doesn't mean you're lying if there's a case that goes against that correlation.
Let's just say that they're synonyms. They mean the same thing.
I don't think they're synonyms. I disagree with that premise.
Well, they're synonyms. Yeah, okay, again, then you just render these words meaningless.
Not at all.
The reason you won't engage with it is
Wait, I've literally defined cissexual, I've defined cisgender, I've defined all these terms for you. They have meaning.
Let me restate it this way then. Let's say the clone comes out, the Naomi clone, and they have this pronoun, and the pronoun is zig. Let's say it's a zig, right? Say zig when you refer to me. That's the pronoun that I care about.
Like if somebody wants to use a neopronoun?
Well, no, they just refer. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? Who cares what it is?
I literally don't care. I'd just be like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah. But what if that pronoun specifically is a correlate? It's not only a correlate, but it means the same thing as the sex.
That's not what pronouns are.
Well,
I disagree with that premise.
It is what a lot of pronouns are. She, her does mean sex. It's absurd to say that it doesn't.
She, her does.
Often the reference is to sex.
She, her does not have. She, her is not like a synonym for biological female. That is not true.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
okay,
it is.
So you believe that your biological sex is determined by your genes, right?
Yeah.
So do you like genotype people before you like call them she, her?
I don't even know what that means. It's incoherent.
Do you like run a test to determine their genome before you call them she, her?
You don't need to, because you can see the manifestation of the genes. It's not necessary.
Oh, so gene expression. So gene expression. The manifestation of the genes is gene expression, which would include trans people.
Who ran away from gene expression? Let's get into gene expression. If you're going to talk about how this manifests into trans people, which is absurd, there's only two paths. But one more time, backing it up, when you just got done saying she, her does not relate to biological females.
That is not what I said. That is not what I said.
Well, then who else does it relate to? Some social construction you make up?
So she, her is a gendered pronoun. It would refer to gender, not biological sex.
Did it exist before we came up with the construction of gender?
I think that things generally exist even prior to even before we have terms to define them. Like
and
even before we had the word gravity, gravity was still real.
That's nice, but what was she, her referring to? And when most people use she, and when most people use she, her, what are they referring to? You said it was not a biological female, and that's not true.
Gender, woman.
Here's your exact words, and I'll give you the timestamp, Naomi. You said she, her doesn't generally refer to a biological female. Those were your words.
I think that in like a correlation, so let me be clear. You can correlate woman and female, therefore there would be a correlation between she, her, and female, but that doesn't mean they're synonymous. Allow me to be more precise.
Let's try this one more time. Let's back up. Your exact words, Naomi, were that she, her does not generally refer to a biological female. Were you lying?
I think that when people use the term she, her, they're not necessarily referring to a biological sex. I think they're referring to a gender. That's what I mean by that.
What do you think most people are referring to when they say she, her?
The gender woman.
You don't think that they're referring to the biological sex of female?
I think they're referring to the gender woman.
Why do you think that they're referring to the gender? So let me ask you this. Do you think that most people know the difference between gender and sex?
I don't know. I think most people have probably heard of it, at least.
Wait, you don't know. You don't know. Do you think... You won't answer a direct question. Do they or don't they? Do you think most people know the difference between gender and sex or not?
I'm going to go probably, yeah.
Probably yes, they do?
Probably most people know the difference between sex and gender, yeah. I hope our educational system is there that most people do.
Yeah, because you didn't want to fucking get caught one more time yet again. So what is your?
Well, I know you want me to make like absolute claims, but
how can you demonstrate for me that most people know the difference? Like, you realize that there's now 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's absolutely no possible way, since most cultures are not Western cultures, that most people on planet Earth know the difference between the construction of gender and sex, and they use them interchangeably. Wouldn't you say most people use sex and gender interchangeably? Answer wisely, because I have you on record. Yes. If they use them interchangeably, that means that they don't know the difference between the two. So when they say she, her,
I think that you can know that two things are different but highly correlated, and descriptively use them interchangeably while still knowing that they are not the exact same thing.
One more time. Do most people use gender and sex interchangeably, yes or no?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, like, people
Yes.
people often use like race and ethnicity interchangeably, but that doesn't mean that those are the same thing either.
If that's true, Naomi, and they use sex and gender interchangeably, when most people say she, they're referring to a biological woman. That would be how the term she has not only always been used, but how it's still used for the vast majority of the planet. Wouldn't you agree?
But isn't it also referring to the gender of woman if they believe that they're interchangeable?
No, you just said that they use sex as being interchangeable with gender.
If they believe that sex and gender is interchangeable, then if they're using she, her, that's referring to woman.
They think
also.
They're saying the same thing. They think they're saying the same thing. They think when they say gender, they mean sex, and when they say gender, they mean sex. So sex is sex.
So if that's
gender
true,
is sex.
they're still referring to a gender.
No, they're referring to a sex.
Wouldn't they be referring
Why would they be? Why would the
if
default
they
be to a
believe they're
gender?
interchangeable, then they would be referring to both, wouldn't they? So it is true that they're referring to a gender.
No. They're just referring to sex. They don't know the distinction.
Wait. If they're interchangeable, they would be referring to both, right?
No, they would just be referring to one.
Why do you default to sex?
They don't know what gender even is.
Wait, why do you
They have no
default to
clue.
it being sex?
What else would it be? What else
Gender.
would she refer to if not gender?
Well, it would refer to gender. That's the other thing it would be.
What would it refer to if no gender was available?
I think that it still can refer to gender even if they don't have the term gender. Because gender exists regardless of if they have the term gender in their language. Gravity still exists even if we don't have the word gravity.
Right. Okay, so
gender
you
still
don't
exists
think-
even if they don't have the word gender.
So in Naomi's world, you don't actually believe that when most people say she, they don't think of a woman with a vagina and breasts and reproductive organ. You don't think that that's what they think when they say she.
I don't think that people look for vaginas and ovaries when they say she. I think they look for social presentation, which would be gendered.
You don't think that men who want to breed with women look for those categorizations when they say she?
Like, you're just like looking at people's vaginas in public to determine if you're going to call them she or
they're
he?
going to look for the
That's a bit
biological
weird.
categorization of woman. Yeah. Why? No, that's not a bit weird. Why would it be
I think
weird?
it's a bit weird to like look at people's
Why would that
crotches
be
in
weird?
public.
Wait, back up. You got to help me out here.
Uh-huh.
Why is it weird?
I'm just not
to
staring at people's
understand-
crotches in public. Like when I like gender someone, like I'm not looking at their crotch to do that.
What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? It has nothing to do with anything that I'm
You
saying.
said that people when they think she, they think like vagina.
They think of the characteristics of woman, yeah.
But you're not like looking for a vagina to gender someone?
That's a huge characteristic when it comes to breeding for a male, isn't it, Naomi?
Well, if we're talking about breeding, we'd be talking about female, not woman.
Well, female requires what? Can you breed without a vagina? Just curious. Can you do it? Can it be done?
I think you can have your asshole bred.
What? They just make shit up as you go? Can you breed without a vagina? I'm asking you.
Like, can you actually get pregnant?
Yeah.
Oh, getting pregnant? No. Well, actually,
can't
no.
breed.
Actually, hold up. You can get pregnant without a vagina. There are like women that are born without vaginas that do have like intact wombs and they can get pregnant. I was talking more like breeding kinks and like, yeah, there are people that like.
So one more time, when a man references she, you think that they're referencing a gender category, even though most people in the world have no such categorization distinction. They're thinking about the biological fact that this is a female and the other person is male. You know this because you've already agreed.
I don't think they're thinking strictly about biology.
Hang on, Naomi. When you say she, if you're in a country that has no no gender social construction that's made up in the West, obviously they're referring to the biological characteristics. How could they be referring to anything else? They're referring to the things that they know are biologically distinct.
Because the social characteristics still exist, even if they don't have a word for them.
So you think that they might be referring to a man who dresses like a woman? Generally? Like as a norm? Really?
I think that
or no?
Sometimes they might be referring...
Yeah, but I didn't say sometimes. Generally.
Generally? I think that generally their kind of conception of women includes both social and perhaps biological characteristics, particularly in cultures where they don't have a word for gender.
When they say she, do you think that they're referring to men? Biological
Typically,
men?
no.
Typically, no. So this would mean then, Naomi, that you lied earlier when you said that she refers to gender most of the time and not sex. It doesn't. So she does refer most of the time to sex.
You know that it can typically refer to both, right?
Within the construction that you have made up, yes, but that's not a global average.
Wait.
When a person says she...
Hold up. Let me... If you believe that... Or let's say we're in a culture where they use sex and gender interchangeably, then she is typically referring to both sex and gender. So yes, it is still true that it's still true that it's typically referring to gender because it's referring to both gender and
she to refer to men who dress up like women.
It's referring to both. No. Like by definition, if it's interchangeable, it's referring to both.
I said that they're literally synonyms with these people is what I mean by interchangeable. When they say sex or gender, they mean sex. Like when they see a bathroom stall that says, if it said this gender here, that gender there, they're not thinking in terms of what your biological construction you made up.
Wait, what cultures don't have a concept of gender but have gendered bathrooms?
Well, probably none. I'm speaking in a hypothetical. It's irrelevant. Okay. It's totally and completely irrelevant to what I'm saying. I'm saying on average, when a person says she, clearly it's revolving around the biological construction of a woman. There's no doubt that that's true. How can it be anything other? And you just agreed that that's true.
I think that they're probably referring to both biological and sociological traits.
Okay, so then that would mean that they use she often to refer to men.
How so?
Because if the man says that they're a woman, then they would be using she to refer to that man, right?
Wait, I never claimed that.
Well, yes, you did. You just don't know you did. This is the problem.
That's not something that I said.
You have what are called logical inferences. This is the whole problem. This entire debate, the whole time, you run, you pivot, you do everything but answer a question. It's
I have
kind
answered
of insane,
your questions
to be honest.
multiple times.
But
you just don't like the answers I give.
The problem is that you won't deal with the ramifications of them. You won't deal with what that means as an extension. If most people use she to refer to biological sex, then what you said earlier, that they use she to refer to both, is an absolute lie. And you've just admitted that they use she most of the time as a normative to refer to biological sex.
We're talking about cultures where they use sex and gender interchangeably.
That's every culture. Every culture basically uses these. They would be referring
to, if it's interchangeable in those cultures, they'd be referring to both.
As synonyms, Naomi. That's what I mean by interchangeable. I've already made this distinction.
If it's synonyms, it's still referring to both.
No, it's only referring to one. When they... So can you say a word and mean a different word?
Can people get the word they're trying to say wrong? Yeah.
No, can they say a word and mean a different word? Yeah.
Like they make a linguistic slip? Yeah, that can happen.
Don't you agree that most of the time, globally, when people hear the word gender, they conflate it with sex? They think that they mean the same thing?
To an extent.
Yeah, to an extent. And I know that you believe this because I've heard endless rants from you on this. It's not to an extent. You believe that that's true.
I think it's true to an extent.
Yeah, well, I mean, to what extent? Most of the time, right? That's
yeah,
what you said.
I would say that typically
you have said most of the time.
I would say that typically people conflate them. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, okay. So if that's true, then they are referring to biological sex when they say she most of the time. So your earlier statement was.
But wait, if they're conflating them, it refers to both. That's
no, it only refers to one because they're not referring to anybody other than the biological female as being she.
No. Lots of these cultures recognize forms of gender expansiveness and like use pronouns based off of the lived social experience of gender expansive people.
Oh my lord!
Like
this
they
is
literally
pointless.
do recognize like gender.
All right,
I've never seen anybody
I gotta cut in.
use to answer
I gotta cut
questions
it. Hang
more.
on, Andrew. Hang on.
All right.
This is my first time cutting in the whole debate. I actually enjoyed the back and forth a lot. You guys made my job very easy, but it was very difficult to determine when to cut in here to wind it down, because we are right at the end of the open dialogue portion. We do need to get into the closing statements. That way we can do callers, super chats, Q&A, all that. I'm sure there will be continued dialogue after the closing statements, which we all know. But all that being said, we do need to get to them. So, Naomi, you've got 7 minutes on the clock here for your closing statement.
All right. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. I think that, you know, even though there are contexts where people conflate gender and sex, like my opponent Andrew does all the time, we can still recognize that they are different concepts that refer to broadly different things. And, you know, if there are contexts where people are referring to gender purely socially and perhaps even against what one's biological sex might be, such as traditional cultures that recognize gender expansive people, I mean, the Hijra in India, you know, date back thousands of years, and they are recognized differently socially than whatever their biological sex was. So I think that, you know, we can talk about these cultures. We can talk about how even if they use things interchangeably, there still is that difference there. And, you know, they are referring to gender. Even if they don't know that they're referring to gender, they are referring to gender. They're referring to a social class. When they're determining, you know, what, say, gendered term to use to refer to someone, they're not inspecting their reproductive organs to do so. They're observing their social presentation, which perhaps might include some secondary sex characteristics, but it's not to say that it's solely based on their sex. The problem is that Andrew over here, throughout this entire conversation, has been trying to reduce things solely to biological sex. And that's just not the most useful framework to analyze these situations. There are lots of social elements in play. There are many arbitrary social distinctions we make along the lines of gender, from, you know, who wears their hair long to like what colors we consider gendered one way or another. And biology simply can't explain these things. And I think that's okay. It just shows that there is a utility in recognizing the social nuance of these situations. I also think it was interesting that Andrew really didn't succeed at addressing the social utility arguments at all. It seemed that he wanted to focus much more on just like attacking the concept of identity, which, sure, identity can be complicated, and, you know, I think that people can have lots of different perspectives about identity, and that's okay. But I think that, you know, what we should do prescriptively, what we ought to do, is focus on what we can do to do the most good for the world. And while we can descriptively analyze gender under a sociological framework, we can descriptively analyze biological sex under a biological framework. You know, the most utility comes in recognizing the distinction between sex and gender. The most utility comes in recognizing trans people as the gender they would like to be. I think that enforcing certain gender roles and expectations on people is harmful and outdated. And I'd like to live in a world where we have more freedom to do what we want, to be who we want to be, and enforcing these social expectations on people just doesn't bring us closer to that world. So, I mean, my prescription is like, let's just be chill, and let's just let people be who they want to be, and do things that improve the overall well-being of everyone, such as gendering a trans person how they want. Just be chill about it, you know? I want to live in the chill world, not the world where we're like hyper-focused on, am I lying by not knowing whether or not this clerk I'm interacting with at the grocery store was trans, and if they're trans I need to misgender them. That just seems like a overcomplicated and messy and not very good world to live in. Alright, I'll cede my time there.
Okay, thank you for that. Andrew, you got the last word, 7 minutes on the clock.
So this was by far the easiest trans debate I've ever done. Even Demon Mama put up a better fight, I think. To kind of go through these one at a time, I said that Naomi's definition was completely regressive. Naomi says, no, it's not. I encompass all these other things, but when we get right down to it, Naomi admitted time and time and time again, it's basically just personal preference when it comes to gendering, right? A woman is a woman who claims they're a woman is a woman, claims they're a woman is a woman. Always the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't know how many times I trapped Naomi into that, but it was immense. We could barely even get into the biological categorizations, which I would have enjoyed doing because we were stuck on the social aspect. And what Naomi says is, Naomi says, well, no, you see, there's a difference between sex and gender, which was established at the beginning of the debate. There's no doubt that not only do I understand the distinctions perfectly, but I weaponize them against your own worldview because they deserve to be weaponized against your worldview. Naomi can't answer simple questions, ran from most of the hypotheticals, tried to reframe them. I penned them down over and over and over again. And this is the problem. Every single time you get into one of these gender debates, when you ask a person, why should I lie? Why should I lie? In order to make you feel better. And that was the real point of contention that we got into. Naomi says, because the objective outcomes, if you lie to us, are better for us. Well, that's great for you. What about the outcomes for us? Where's the empirical data that the outcomes for you are worse? Who's out there doing studies on if the outcomes are worse for people who have to lie to you? Nowhere, because they're all funded by LGBTQ pro groups. That's why. Not only that, but if we were just going to take it on a util metric, there's far more people who believe like I do than believe like Naomi does, which should show the causative harm that's being done by forcing us to lie over and over again. When I said to Naomi, hey, look, if you say we have to lie or else I'm going to hurt myself or I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to do horrible things to myself, Naomi says, no, that's not it. We're looking at the objective outcomes. It just hurts your feelings, but that's all it is the other way. It's just feelings based. They start with the feelings, and if their feelings are increased, then their objective outcomes are better. They don't give a shit about your feelings. They don't care how the fuck you feel about doing any of it. They could care less. And Naomi said over and over again, essentially, Naomi doesn't care. Naomi only cares about Naomi's feeling. Doesn't give a shit what applies to you when we talk about gendering a person. Absurd statements like making a gender categorization can never refer to sex. Fucking absurd on its face. Of course it can. That's what cis is, by the way. Don't listen to the bullshit. When questioned, Naomi on the cis thing basically said, well, yeah, but that's just me. That's cis-sexual. Just any goalpost that they can fucking run away from, they'll run away from. So, yeah, I had some fun. I do appreciate Naomi walking into the arena, but I don't think it was good for him. But anyway, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much, and I'll leave my closing there.
All right, thank you for that. All that being said, the closing statements are finished, and for those of you that don't know, the debate is now considered to be officially over. We are still going to have some back and forth with the caller segment and super chats. I do have some questions of my own, but I'll try to be quick with those. Before we get into that, I do want to remind everybody to please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. If you have questions, there's still a lot of time left to ask them via super chat, and we do have some callers in the back line waiting to get their questions in. But we'll get right into it. Naomi, I do have just one quick line that I want to go down, and I want to beat up on you because I think the caller segment will actually be beating up on Andrew more, believe it or not, based on who we've got in the background. But so what I was thinking early on when you kind of said that we ought affirm the gender identity of a trans person because it will reduce their chances of committing suicide, or by not affirming them, we increase their chance of committing suicide. That's what you believe, right?
Yeah, I think that creating better social outcomes is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So what I was thinking here, and I kind of just thought of this on the fly, is that the whole gender phenomena, the transgender phenomena, is by all metrics antithetical to Christian fundamentalists or Orthodox Christianity. And
how so?
I think, well, I mean, like our branch of Christianity, like the Orthodox, the fundamentalists, we are rejecting the concept of gender on its face, and we don't believe that there's any social category of gender, and that's all ultimately deriving from our faith. So
I don't see how that's like based on like any biblical teaching.
Well, we believe that we're made in the image of God and that He gave us
do you think that like God made like gender expansive people in His image?
No. Okay, so there are progressive versions of Christianity that may affirm that. We do not. So our like the Orthodox Christian worldview and most fundamentalist Christians are not going to accept that.
Based
So
off of like
that's
what biblical teaching?
Well, I mean, we could cite multiple biblical sources.
Yeah, what's your biblical source that like trans people are not like made in the image of God?
We would also look to church traditions, things like that. Like, and
Wait,
I mean,
what matters more, the biblical teachings or the church traditions?
Well, they're you can't separate them in our worldview. The church and the Bible go hand in hand.
So how does the church speak for God?
This isn't actually my point. I was hoping you would just be charitable and accept that the more fundamentalist Christians are going to be rejecting the gender stuff, where the more progressive ones might accept it, and people that are religious are obviously going to be more willing to accept it. Like, is that all fair to say?
I think that generally that's true, yeah, but I don't think there's like a good reason for fundamentalists to reject trans people.
Well, I mean, okay, you could say that, but this is where I was going with it. Is that I think the more we see people accept things that go against Christianity, I think the more we see them apostatize, which simply means fall away from the faith. And then we can look at the statistics to show that non-Christians are far more likely to commit suicide than Christians. So if you are telling us we ought affirm something that we see as antithetical to our faith, aren't you also telling us that we ought to do something that would actually make us more likely to commit suicide by affirming gender?
I don't think it's necessarily like being a Christian or not that's going to make someone like more or less suicidal. I think that you can certainly.
That's true.
Well, let's talk about like why that's true. I think that why it's true that religious people tend to, commit suicide at lower rates is because they have that religious community. I think that everybody needs community, and so as long as people can find their own sense of community, I think that you should see, similar rates of good mental health outcomes. So I guess like if people use religion as that outcome, as long as they're not harming others, sure, that seems like one way to do it. If people, do other kind of community-based efforts to improve their mental health, improve social cohesion, live a good life, I think that's also fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of speculation there, but I'll leave it there. I think what I'm trying to illustrate is that the ought claim that you make that it prevents suicidality or lower suicidality, I think can be turned back on you to some degree or another. But we don't have to harp on it too long because we do have a lot of callers. If you want to respond or we can move on.
No, I think I responded to that.
Okay, that's fine. So we're gonna get into callers. First one we got here is Corinth. Go ahead.
So basically, even if you see it as a lie, some lies are generally going to be seen as a good thing to do. Like, I think we all basically, if we're adults, we know this. If your wife was to ask you, am I fat, and you think she's fat, you don't say yes.
What if, Corinth, I appreciate you calling and having this discussion with me, by the way. So I agree with you. I just don't understand how that has any merit. Assume for a second that I was a person who was prone to telling even white lies, which even then I would say I'm really not, but assuming that I was, what if my faith directly says that if I lie about this thing, I will be eternally, put under hellfire? Let's just assume that that's baked into this hypothetical. What would that do to my mental health if I was forced to lie about that thing?
If you held that position for everything, that would be a fairly reasonable thing to say.
Yeah.
But also, no one actually just has never told a lie.
I'm not saying nobody's ever told a lie, but what I am saying is that you do agree within the Christian purview that lying is a sin, right?
Andrew, is it a sin to tell your kid that Santa Claus is real?
I think that there's significant damage that's done there. So yeah, I would not recommend that people tell their kids that Santa Claus is real.
Don't tell your kids that like Santa brought them presents?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
First of all,
For the
Santa
record,
Claus, by the way, Santa Claus doesn't get the credit. I bought that shit. Okay? I bought that shit. It's not that Santa Claus tales aren't funny or fun or things like that. It's not that you can't get in the spirit, but there should be a delineation between what's
But like,
real.
do you think that like Santa
and what's
Claus
not real.
tales are like a social harm if like kids believe that it's real?
If they believe that it's real and that there is some mystical fat man from the North Pole who is dropping presents down your chimney, I think that would be a perceived societal harm. It's not great, no.
That's interesting.
More importantly,
I think kids like
think
Santa. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you lie to kids,
I think that
or just
I think
white
that we
lies
tell
to kids,
them-
Naomi?
I think that there are lots of white lies we tell kids.
Yeah, well, which ones do you want us to tell our kids? Do you want us to lie to our kids? What do you want us to lie to them about?
I think that things like Santa Claus are okay to tell kids about. I think it's okay for kids to have an imagination.
Okay, but what if we're lying to them? Is that okay? Why is that okay?
Well, I think it depends on the specific lie.
Okay, why is lying to kids okay at all?
So I think you have to look at the actual outcomes. It seems that kids get enjoyment out of like Santa Claus, and that seems like a pretty good outcome.
Well,
But
I mean,
there are
we
other
can
lies that
lie,
can have
we
bad
can lie to
outcomes.
them about all kinds of things they might
Yeah,
get
that's why you have to
enjoyment
assess
from.
the outcome.
That's so absurd. It's like
I don't think there's a negative
lying
outcome
to,
of like
lying to
talking
children
to,
in
to
general,
kids about
you
Santa
would
Claus.
say, well, wouldn't you say that lying to children in general is bad?
I think it depends on.
Produces
I think it
probably
depends
bad
on the lie.
outcomes in general.
I think it really depends on the lie.
So you think that lying to kids in general is not bad?
I think
Or
that
you're
it's,
just
I think that
neutral
it's
on
very nuanced on this.
It's very nuanced. Okay, gotcha.
All right, we got to get moving here. Corinth, do you have any follow-up
yeah,
questions?
sorry.
Yeah. So, do you think a Christian would go to hell if they told Nazis that their neighbor wasn't a Jew, even if they knew their neighbor was?
No, of course not.
So we both then will agree then that at a certain point you can lie, and it, even if it is a sin in the Christian worldview, the harm done
Yeah. So
that
we're
will be
we're-
prevented is getting prevented, right?
So you're arguing within a utilitarian framework. We would understand as deontologists ourselves that telling the lie in itself may have been bad, and we're all sinners, right? But the fact that we lied in order to preserve life, we would maybe justify it that way, but still ask for the forgiveness for the lie, and even ask for forgiveness for the Nazi hunting the Jew, or the Jew, for whatever reason, we may ask for forgiveness for them as well. It just all depends on what the situation is. But yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with what you're saying, but you can understand why we shouldn't classify that as not being a lie. It still would be a lie.
It can be considered a lie.
Yeah.
But my point is basically that at a certain point, how direct does that threat of life have to be?
Well, so
If
that's
you could
a
say
that,
that
yeah.
if you
That's
say
a
the
great
trans
question.
person's going to kill themselves and you knew that
Well,
they
right,
would, or
but
you had a
the thing
reasonable thought
is-
that they would you say that you can lie?
Yeah, but Corinth, the problem with this whole debate was that Naomi really wouldn't stick to that line of, the causative effect is that a trans person may kill themselves if we misgender. Instead saying, no, it's just outcomes. We're just looking at outcomes when, of course, it's absurd. We're looking at feelings here. So if you're saying, should we spare the feelings of that person under your own utilitarian framework, you need to be able to demonstrate that the person who is forced to do the misgendering isn't experiencing as much harm as the other. And you can only point to one form of empiricism based on polling that hasn't been done for the other side. So I think that that's bullshit.
Sure. Have you ever felt like you wanted to kill yourself if you called a trans person the gender they wanted to be called?
No.
Then do you think if someone was to tell you, hey, this is really harming my mental health to the point where it is making me suicidal, that you are being harmed less?
Perhaps, but let me ask you a question. How much harm am I in taking by that kind of emotional hostage taking?
I don't know. How much harm are you taking?
Well, I'm asking you, would you say that there's harm to me by you holding me emotionally hostage?
There might be, but I'd have to ask you directly.
Why do you
how
think
much-
it's okay to hold another person emotionally hostage with the threat of suicidality? Why do you think that that's okay to do?
I'm trying, because at a certain point, a minor inconvenience is less harmful than that.
Right. So
Wait, Andrew,
you
think that...
think emotion. Hang on, Naomi. Caller, you do think that emotional hostage taking is fine as long as it gets you the result that you want.
No, I just think the result.
No, you do. As long as the result isn't more harmful, you're going to take people emotionally hostage. You don't care. Fuck them. Fuck the ramifications of that. You don't care about any of that. You only care about how it makes you feel. How's that not fundamentally selfish, horrific, awful, and everything? And by the way, the thing is like, from my perspective, why is the problem from my perspective not supposed to be self-correcting? Why shouldn't I be like, well, then go fucking, what do I care? Go do it then.
So the first part would be, I can think both are bad simultaneously. I can just think one is worse. I can think you probably shouldn't be emotionally hostage taking someone else, but I also think that if you're doing something that you know will cause someone to be suicidal, that's probably a little bit worse.
Let me ask you a question.
A reasonable.
All right, we got to make.
Hang on, this is important. This is
Yep.
important.
Yep.
I know we have to wrap the calls up because we have to move on. But Corinth, I do have a question for you, and it's very important. This is a phenomenon that I'm familiar with, as I have many daughters. If somebody was dating your daughter, and your daughter was going to break up with them, and they said, please don't break up with me. If you do, I'm going to kill myself. Would you tell your daughter to break up with them anyway?
Yes, because the ask of committing your life to someone for that is a much greater ask than calling someone she, her.
What if they said, I'm only going to come over and have sex with you once a month? And
that is also a lot more than just saying.
Demonstrate it. Demonstrate that that's worse than the person killing themselves. Go ahead.
That you're emotionally hostage taking someone that is amounting to rape.
Yeah. Well, how's that worse than a person killing themselves, though?
I'm not sure I'd say it's worse. I just don't.
Well,
think
then why ought we do it? You can't answer. You've got no answer.
I'm sorry. Can you rephrase that? Why ought we?
Yeah. Why ought we do it then? Why should we tell them to break up with them if it's not worse?
All right, Corinth, you got to answer this, and we got to move on.
Yep,
So
they're a lot more analogous. They so if these two things have similar levels, then it's a lot more willing to be able to push to whichever one benefits the person more.
All right.
But
that literally makes no sense. But okay, whatever.
Okay, we got.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling and talking to me. But
yeah, thanks for calling in. We're gonna move on.
Wait, Andrew, do you think it's like emotional hostage taking for like a Weimar Jew to like ask someone not to like rat them out to the Nazis?
No, I don't think that that's emotional hostage taking. I think that's an appeal to their morality.
Okay, so couldn't it be an appeal to morality to say you ought to gender trans people? Like the way they want to be gendered?
Sure, if you can justify it and
like with
not
empirical
come into
data?
conflict with the other person's morals, yes.
Well, but even lying about whether or not that person is a Jew is coming into contact with your morals, because your morals
I agree,
are against
but
lying.
I've already explained this. We understand as deontologists that both are sinful. It doesn't mean we wouldn't still make the choice of going for the lesser sin.
Okay, I think it's pretty clear that like gendering trans people correctly is the lesser sin.
That makes no sense, but okay. Your caller certainly didn't demonstrate that, and you haven't demonstrated it, but okay.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're gonna move to the next call. I do want to ask rhetorically, why do you guys always resort to the same example of the Jew and the Nazi? Like, why is it always the same emphasis on this? It's frustrating
because it's the maximum amount of like emotional gut punch, basically.
That's what I interpret. But hey,
yeah, it's good. It's good.
All right. Much as I hate to allow this, go ahead, Synth, with your autistic Spurgy call-in. Go ahead.
Oh my God.
We're not gonna run away from any callers, including our own in-house debaters. Right? That's nice to see you, Synth. Go ahead, man.
Sure, I've got a question. So, do you think if you started calling trans women by the pronouns they wanted, do you think it's more likely you're trying to deceive people into believing they've got XX chromosomes, or do you think you've probably just changed your definition?
I don't understand the question. Restate it for me.
The question is just if you, Andrew, started calling trans women by the pronouns they wanted, sounds like she and her and such, do you think it's more likely you're trying to deceive people into believing they've got XX chromosomes?
No.
Or do you think you've probably just changed your definition?
No, neither. That's a bifurcation. I don't ascribe to either theory. I think that it's alluding to something that is fundamentally untrue. which you can be a woman and not have, you can have chromosomal disorders, this type of thing. That's why we use the path system inside of biology.
Okay, so do you think you're trying to deceive them into believing they've got a certain kind of biology they don't?
No, I think that you're going along with the delusion of this type of biology that you know is not true.
Okay, so then you don't think you're saying something untrue. You don't think you're trying to deceive anyone into having a false belief.
I think that you're deceiving the person into having a false belief.
What is the false belief?
The false belief is that they themselves are perhaps a biological woman.
Perhaps a biological woman. That's the false belief.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a modal statement, right? What do you mean by perhaps?
Well, what do you mean by modal?
Modal statement just means that there are statements about different types of possibility statements. Like, for example, if I was to say it's possibly the case that I'm a woman, this would just be some kind of
okay. Well, then
relative to, like,
to
logical,
answer,
or whether or not it's like physically possible, right? All of these,
to answer that directly, then no, you would always be lying to them because they would never be the thing that they're claiming to be.
Well, yeah, modal statements aren't about what is certainly the case right now, right? Modal statements are about what's possibly the case.
It'll never possibly be the case.
What'll never possibly be the case?
That they would be able to biologically change their sex.
Sorry, do you think that by calling somebody, do you think when I call, like, Naomi, she, her, that I'm trying to convince Naomi that she can change her chromosomes?
I think you're trying to convince other people that she should be perceived as a person who is in line with somebody who's biologically a woman, yes.
Sorry, but that's not the question I asked.
Well, I'm sorry. Restate the question, and I'll answer it again.
Do you think that I'm trying to convince people to believe that Naomi's sex is different than what it is?
Yes.
Really? What do you think I'm trying to convince people that Naomi's sex is?
Because I think that in general, transgenders are lying.
Okay, that's just not relevant. It doesn't matter if transgender.
How is that not relevant? You asked me why I thought the thing, and I told you.
There's a false. Well, you're trying to demonstrate there's a false belief.
There is a false belief. It's not true.
But you said the false. Well, you said the false belief is you. So you said the false belief is that Naomi has a different sex, right? I'm telling you, there's no reason why I don't believe that Naomi has a different sex than I'm making the assumption, I haven't karyotyped Naomi, right? That Naomi's got XY chromosomes, but as like in terms of endocrine system, something that's like mostly going to be disproportionately high estrogen levels, low testosterone levels, right?
Well, wait a second. But Naomi,
but none of those have anything to do with she, her.
But Naomi has stated on record that you can change your actual sex.
That's irrelevant to my position.
No, it's not irrelevant to your position because this would mean that you should be chastising Naomi for lying, right?
I don't think that Naomi's lying. I just think Naomi's using the term sex differently than how you use it.
Well, what is that? How is that not a lie? How is it not a lie?
Can Naomi this is a dodge from the question.
It's not a dodge. Can Naomi change Naomi's sex?
If Naomi was saying the sky was red, that wouldn't make it the case that I'm saying the sky is red, right?
I didn't say that it would.
Sure, then there's nothing that's lying by calling a trans woman she, her.
Yes, it is, because baked into the supposition of your question was, Andrew, do you believe that when I say this blank thing to Naomi, that this is true? The answer is no. I know for sure because Naomi stated on record you can change your sex. That's how I know it's a lie.
The thing that I'm stating to Naomi is what?
You're saying, making the claim that when you refer to Naomi as this thing, you're not trying to change people's minds that actually Naomi can change their sex, right?
I'm not trying to change anyone's mind that Naomi can change her chromosomes. I think I would agree that Naomi can change her hormone levels.
But you can't change your sex.
It depends on if you mean by sex, you mean chromosomes or hormone levels or gamete production.
Okay. Well, in fact, I would mean chromosomes and gamete production. We can use both those criteria. You ain't can change either of them.
You can certainly change your gamete production. You can turn it off entirely, right? In Naomi's case, I have no idea.
Yeah, but you can't switch over to the other side, right?
You can't switch over to the other side? What do you mean by that?
I mean,
you can't begin to produce large gametes if you originally produce small. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so what am I trying to... So what's
the implicit lie is that essentially the perception would be that you're trying to claim that Naomi could do such a thing. That's what enters people's minds.
You said the lie is implicit?
Not always, but in this case it would be.
You think it's an implicit lie? I'm implicitly trying to get people to have the false belief that Naomi can change her gamete production from small gametes to large gametes.
I think that's inferred by saying woman, yeah.
So I don't think that's even close to inferred. I think most people.
I think it is inferred.
No, do you think that most people think that trans women are going to be able to produce large gametes?
I think that the perception is that they're trying to pretend to be somebody who can, yeah.
That's not the question I asked, though.
So,
All right.
but
Yeah,
well,
well,
by
hold on, hold on,
inference,
hold on,
by the
hold on.
inference, then the answer is
Hold
yes.
on.
I do.
Hold
I
on,
do think
hang on.
that.
Synth, hold on.
Yeah.
Synth, formulate your question in a way that is clear, and
Yeah, it
this
was a
will have
clear
to be the
question.
last one because we have to move on. So go ahead.
Yeah, the question was clear the entire time. I'm just trying to figure out what the lie is, and there just doesn't seem to be one. It seems like when Andrew says there's a lie here, Andrew just means that like it doesn't comply with Andrew's set of definitions. But if I just use a different set of definitions, that's not going to be a lie. And if it's the case that I'm like using a set of definitions that even it complied with Andrew, but wasn't trying to convince anyone to hold a false belief, it wouldn't be a lie either. So
No, it's
I
not
just
just.
don't think
It's not
Andrew's-
just
I think
based on a
Andrew's-
set of definitions.
Andrew's primary point in the debate kind of just falls flat on
No.
further investigation.
Yeah, and we'll have.
We've got
this
a debate, right?
Yeah,
We've got
we'll
a
have this debate. We'll have
See
this
there,
debate.
Andrew.
But
You
again,
have a-
it's not so. It's not so that just changing around the definitions, because there is an objective reality to this. So
Oh,
the definition
also,
still has to fit with
Andrew.
with the objective reality.
For our debate, something like background information is going to be important. You should look into what a semantic prime is, because there's not actually an issue with recursive definitions. If there was, there'd be an issue with all definitions, because they all necessarily need to bake down into a recursion.
Yeah, we can get into that too. But all right,
See you there, bud.
Yep. Thanks for the call. We got to move on. All right. Next up, we got Jim Bob. What's up, Jim Bob?
Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. So nominal, if you
Yeah.
let's say you're a biological male and you go and you present as a female and you go to like a bar and you have like 3 friends with you and they all affirm you as a female, right, in public. And let's say there's a guy, Brad, who approaches you and Brad maybe is attracted to you and sexually from the outset, and your friends and you are still presenting you as a biological female. First question is, are you lying? Are you withholding something from Brad, who, to your best of knowledge, thinks you're an actual female, and his pursuit of you is based on the assumption that you're an actual female? How long do you keep the truth of the matter about your biology from Brad in the situation? And are you and your friends lying to Brad if you don't disclose that information?
Okay, so wait, how are my friends affirming that I'm a biological female?
How?
Yeah. You're saying that my friends are affirming that I'm like a biological female. How are they doing that?
Brad, they're talking to Brad, and then they go, oh, she. They use she, referring to you as a she,
Okay.
right? You're presenting as a female, correct? Would you say you're presenting right now as a female?
Phenotypically, yeah.
Okay, so the question is, if you and your friends are at the bar and Brad is attracted to you, and you're under the impression that Brad thinks you are you're a female, and your friends are referring to you as a female, how are you lying to Brad by not disclosing that you're not actually a female biologically? And if you are, how long do you wait to tell Brad?
Yeah, okay, so first on like the lying thing, if somebody like makes a false assumption about somebody and doesn't ask for clarification, there's no lie there. Somebody just had a false assumption. I think that like if say like Brad was going after a woman and like later found out that she was infertile, he might have had a false assumption that she could get pregnant, but she never lied to him by just like not disclosing right off the bat that she's infertile, for example. And like as to when I would disclose to Brad, if things got to a point where it seemed like, we were going to be intimate, I would require like an emotional connection strong enough that I am comfortable telling him that I'm trans, because I think that's, an intimate detail about me, and people that I'm intimate with, I would want to be emotionally close enough with that I can disclose that prior to us getting intimate.
Okay, so you would actually keep discussion with Brad for how, like, weeks, or until you disclose that? Because if you were under the impression intuitively that Brad really thought you were actually a physical female, and you knew this, you had the assumption, there were things mentioned, but you didn't really talk about those things right away because you didn't feel the time. So the question is, are you comfortable leading biological men on to thinking you're a biological female?
Well, if
and
Brad
for
were to,
how long?
If Brad were to say something about me that's not true, I would correct that. But I can't know for sure like what Brad assumes about me unless he tells me. But if he's concerned as to like whether or not he wants to date like a trans woman or like a cis woman, I think that the impetus is on him to ask like whether or not someone's cis or trans.
What if he was at the bar?
There's not like a way you can know just by looking at someone.
What if he at the bar he said, you are a very interesting female? Would you correct him?
I would not be interested in that man. Who describes women as females?
if he said, "Wow, you are one interesting female," would you correct him?
I think that's a bit of a creepy statement. I'd probably disengage.
But you wouldn't correct him?
Well, that's where I'm terminating the connection, so I don't think that like I need to, like interact with him further. Like that, like it just sounds like he's like an incel. If
I
he's,
do
like,
feel like
talking
this is
about
a bit of a
females.
cop out.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, I mean, like, assuming things are going well and you guys are like feeling each other, you're both attracted, and he kind of like smoothly just uses the term like, "Wow, like what an interesting female you are." I typically don't interact with females because some people do.
I don't typically interact with females. That's telling.
People
Some
use
people
the
do
term
use the word
female.
male.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's kind of creepy when people use female that way.
Assume, like, can you grant him some charity here and just assume that, like, it's not in a weird way. It doesn't actually weird you out, and like things are going well. Otherwise, it shouldn't like be a deal breaker because he called you a female. Like, would you correct him? Is like assuming it doesn't actually turn you off. Like, would you correct him if you wanted to continue?
I think I might ask for more about like what he means by that statement. I would certainly think it's a weird statement. Asking like what do you mean by that?
You would ask Brad what he means by a female?
Or like what he means by like you're an interesting female.
Okay, and then second quick question is that if you said your position is that gender is a construct, right?
Gender is a social construct, yeah.
Yeah, and then you would, but the attempt to present would be not a construct, or would be a construct as well, like to pair a gender with an expression, a physical
gender expression.
Like if a biological man wants to present as a female, you would say that their gender they identify with is what?
So if we're talking about presentation, you would say their gender expression would be feminine.
Okay. And so they're linking their gender, which is a construct, to a objective physical expression?
I guess is
feminine.
So like okay.
Is
the interesting thing is that
is female?
No, so like feminine is subjective in that it kind of varies from culture to culture, from society to society. What specifically we determine as like a feminine gendered presentation has varied significantly throughout human history across different cultures.
So if you presented yourself as Andrew or me, would you be able to say that it was a feminine gender expression?
Within the context of American culture, that would be a masculine gendered expression.
Okay.
Okay, we got. I'm sorry to cut it off. We have to move on. If you want one last question,
well, I want to ask a question. I'm just seeing that it seems that the problem or the navigation of gender, which is a social construct, right, and then gender expression, which is also a social construct, seems to be in some sort of tension between how then you pursue something actually objective, which is like, do you want to look like a female? So now you're saying female does look a certain way, right? So it almost assumes an objective appearance to something, right? So it seems, and the same goes for any kind of surgery. You're using a gender, which is a construct, but you're using an objective act against your body or added to your body physically, which would be an objective thing, which would be biological and physical. And so it seems that it would be impossible. It's almost like a category error to take a gender concept, which is a construct, and then try to merge it with something that's objective and real in physicality. Seems like it couldn't possibly ever match based on the ever-changing definitions.
I specifically don't try to merge those two categories. That's why I distinguish transsexual from transgender. As in, transsexual would refer to people who sexually transition, like take cross-sex hormones, perhaps get surgery, that kind of thing. And then transgender would refer to people who socially transition, so perhaps change their gender and expression, go by a different name, pronouns, that kind of thing. And I think that kind of, bridges that gap.
But you would say there's never a one-to-one.
I'm sorry, Jim Bob. I'm sorry. Yeah. We can't do it. We have to move on.
Yeah, there's not a one-to-one.
Thanks for watching. There is hope in Jesus Christ. He will never leave you or forsake you. Like and subscribe and join our Discord for friends and more.